Welcome to Too Many Chefs, episode 14. I am Devious Dave Rose, and as always, let's start off the show by showing our gratitude and appreciation for all those who have chosen to spend their time here today. So, going to the chat, looking way up, we've got Jay Diz, It's the Costanza, Steve Callan, Derailed News and Podcast, and yes, in fact, welcome to my esteemed guest. I'm very honored, privileged, and happy to have him here because I've been looking for this, forward to this for a long time. Ladies and gentlemen, Drew, Derailed News and Podcast.
Good afternoon, Dave. Yeah, we're going to find out how dumb I actually am here. I'll do my best, but I've never actually done something in this format with cheese, so we'll see how well it goes.
All right. Well, I'm sure that you're going to definitely illuminate us all on things that we probably didn't even know about. And this is what I love. I love to learn about food, and I love food. And cheese definitely makes the world go round. So, Drew, there's obviously things that I, as a ignorant savage, need to understand a bit more and a bit better about cheese. And I'm sure many other people in the audience too would, benefit with a refresher course of the basics of cheese and such. So, why don't you take it away?
Well, first I'll tell you, I'm not the greatest at explaining the cheese making process itself. Obviously, I do more on the sales end and knowing more of the qualities of the cheese in their final form. But, just a brief overlay of that is, milk is used to make cheese, obviously. There's the coagulation process,
Hold on. Cheese is made of milk?
In most cases, not
okay,
always,
because looking at the Kraft Singles package, you'd think otherwise. But go ahead, that was just a flippant joke.
We'll talk about that one.
Yes.
But no, there are actually ones that are made vegetarian or vegan, if you will. So there are things other than milk used to make cheese, technically. So I guess I was wrong by saying that. But in the traditional form of cheese, the way us real humans eat cheese, it's made from milk. But you've got the curd, you've got the rennet, which most people don't know what rennet is exactly. I don't know, Dave, do you know what rennet is?
I'm clueless of what that means.
So rennet, which is used to, it's actually, when you think of a big vat of milk and, the curd and everything getting ready to age, rennet is just a little tiny sprinkle of an enzyme, and it's made generally from the stomach of a calf. If memory serves right, that's exactly how the extraction of a calfed rennet, if you will, or calf rather, is the fourth stomach chamber of that calf. So it can't be like an older cow or anything like that.
Now, I know a little bit about this, but okay, so what does the enzyme do? Does it create a chemical reaction to begin the fermentation process, or?
It basically creates the separation, if you will.
Okay.
So again, my knowledge is relatively limited on how that, or when you put it in, or how it works, or everything. But there's vegetarian rennet. There's obviously animal rennet, but they have a way to do it a vegetarian way, as well as microbial, if you will, where it's chemically made. And depending on the cheesemaker and what they want, if they want a more natural, of course, they'll use the animal rennet. But some want to go the vegan route, so you don't have any meat in it whatsoever, because vegetarians, or specifically vegans rather, will stay away from animal rennet cheeses. So they'll use a vegetable rennet to satisfy the vegans, because even that little sprinkle of a calf for stomach is a little too much for them, I guess. And then, of course, there's the chemically made ones as well. But there's typically 4 types of milk that you'll see in cheese. Cow being the most popular, of course, the most well-known, most used, mostly because of its availability. Then you have sheep's milk, goat's milk, and even buffalo milk. Have you ever had a buffalo milk cheese?
I think it was bison, but I mean, well, that's basically the same thing, right?
Yeah, it's more than likely it was a mozzarella that you had.
I think so.
If it was. Yeah. So those are basically, to describe buffalo milk, it's like a cow mozzarella made with buffalo milk, but it's like double the flavor. The If there's a way to condense the flavor of mozzarella further, that's buffalo milk
Everything
flavor.
I know,
A lot
you know,
higher fat.
everything I've experienced with bison is always just much more flavorful. It's meat, it's cheese. Well, the cheese made from, you know, from the milk, but yeah, just much more flavorful.
Well, and that makes sense too, because what a cow or what any animal with that produces milk, what they eat or how they eat, their diet actually reflects in the milk. I've actually had bries before that taste like the vegetables that the cow ate
Wow.
because they were specifically fed certain vegetables, and obviously stronger ones like asparagus or even broccoli to a degree. Things, especially greens, they'll actually enhance into the flavor. You won't see it, so it's not like you'll get a green brie or anything. But I've actually had ones where you can clearly taste the asparagus in it. And it's off-putting to some people because it's like, geez, you can almost think like you're eating their piss in a way, but it's not, you know. Uh, but with buffalo milk, yeah, it reflects basically what you would get from the meat as well. As you can imagine, if you fed a cow asparagus its entire life, you go to eat the steak off of it, you're probably going to get a hint of asparagus in it. Sheep's milk is obviously sheep's milk. You would know it more if you had Manchego or Roquefort, which is a blue cheese. That is going to be a lot oilier. Feta, of course, I forgot to mention feta, duh. But it's got a distinct flavor, very salty, very oily, but at the same time, it's not an offensive flavor. And I think people balk at hearing sheep or even especially goat milk, which I was about to get to, where they're like, oh, I don't want anything to do with that. It's weird. And it's really not, especially sheep milk. I think that's more closer to cow milk flavor. But with goat's milk, you get that piney,
Yes.
lemony flavor that many are familiar with. Or if you haven't had goat's milk, that's the flavor you get out of it.
I find
And
an earthy tone as well.
yeah, we call it a barnyard flavor.
Okay.
But that even could be confusing to people. What's barnyard flavor? You think of like the smells and the hay and stuff. It's like, what is a barnyard flavor? So I'm not a big fan of that. I usually go to lemon or pine, or earthy, like you said. But with most goat milk cheeses, like goat logs, for instance, you'll actually see flavor offered in a lot of them, whether it's blueberry, cranberry, garlic and herb, honey. And that's used to make it more palatable, especially for Americans who aren't used to a diversified palate in cheese. So, you get that honey in there and it really mellows it out. And I'll say that about any cheese that carries a strong flavor. If you like that cheese or you want to impress people with something a little funky or a little different, just make sure you've got some sort of a fruit flavor or a honey with you to assist in that.
Now, just quickly commenting about sheep's milk and goat milk. I actually prefer goat's milk. I prefer goats, period, over sheep. I like their meat better. I like their cheese better, their milk better. I also think goats are cooler. But it's something I've noticed that, I'm just not really down with the sheep.
If you're lactose intolerant, goat's milk is obviously a good way to go. There's a high amount of lactose in sheep's milk, so
I didn't know that. Okay.
I don't know now. See, one thing I always say is I wear a black coat, not a white coat. So consult your doctor. But I do know that sheep carries a high amount of lactose in it versus cow's milk. So again, consult your doctor before just going after the sheep milk. But then again, I would assume you probably already have if you have that issue. I was going to say something else about to your comment about, I've never had goat's meat or sheep's meat that I can recall. I guess I have had veal before. So
yeah, but lamb chops. You never had lamb chops?
Maybe I have once. So that's true. Now that I think about it, but I guess not to any degree where I could speak a lot about it or compare it to its milk.
Okay.
But I guess it depends on the cheese that I'm having, whether I prefer sheep or goat. Like, I love feta. I could eat it right out of the container, just nonstop.
And that's interesting because I really dislike feta. Really dislike it. I don't like the flavor. You're correct. It's got an oily taste. To me, it's the consistency. It's very gelatinous almost.
So it's almost a texture issue then.
Well, it's both. It's
You know,
texture and flavor. The flavor off the bat, I don't like it. I'll eat it, if it's in a lasagna and stuff, but I just don't like it. It's not my preference.
wow, feta and lasagna. I guess I haven't had that either. Maybe it's very discreet in there, but usually it's ricotta that's the
Oh,
dominant cheese in
sorry.
lasagna.
Well, actually, no. I've had both. I've had ricotta, and I've had feta. You know what? I'm sorry. See, this is my ignorance. It's ricotta that I don't like. Feta's not bad. It doesn't. It's not. It's not actually gelatinous. It's the. What did you just say was the one that I don't like?
Texture. Oh,
Ricotta. Yeah,
ricotta. Oh,
that's the
sorry.
one that's gelatinous. And the flavor, it's just I don't like it. But man, now I'm getting.
It's very similar to cottage cheese. Do you like cottage cheese?
Uh, the flavor's not bad. The consistency, not too much. But I mean, the flavor's not bad. It's just that ricotta has a very distinct, unique flavor, and I don't like it.
All right. Hey, fair enough. To each their own.
Sorry,
I don't
ricotta.
like
Yeah,
every
ricotta.
cheese.
Feta,
Yeah.
like feta in, say, a Greek salad or on, I don't know, a souvlaki or something or a gyro. That's okay.
Oh yeah, I couldn't have a gyro without feta in it. And I also, when they have the different meats, and I know we're not talking about gyros, but just a side note, if you use a different meat than what's supposed to be in it, you're not doing it right. I don't want beef in it. I don't want. Some people do chicken gyros. It's like no.
It's got to be
Yeah,
pork.
yeah. So I think that pretty much covers the cheese making process and the different types of cheese. Again, I'm not the most knowledgeable on every little step of the cheese making process. You can do it at home with just a boiling pot of water and some spoiled milk, if you know how to do it. But I guess the milk doesn't even have to be spoiled, but that's basically what amounts out to farmer's cheese. If you ever see farmer's cheese, that's basically just the homemade recipe of making milk in your home. So I chuckle whenever someone asks for farmer's cheese. Yeah, is it available in some stores? Sure, but you can make it yourself really easy.
Yeah.
But that brings me to the next point I wanted to make is making it at home or just making it in general, because people see the prices of, especially of specialty cheese or some of the higher end cheeses, and they're like $20-$30 a pound. You guys are out of your fucking minds. And it's like, no, you're out of your fucking mind to be complaining about that, because did you know that it takes 10 pounds of milk to make 1 pound of cheese?
So how many pounds did it take to make? It probably took. Actually, I'm showing the image of the mammoth cheddar cheese.
Yeah.
And yeah, if it took 10 pounds per 1 pound, it took 20,000 pounds to make of milk to make this mammoth cheddar cheese wheel that
Exactly.
functions as a table as well as a nuclear bomb shelter.
No kidding. And I wanted to show that one just to show, I mean, really that's an extreme case. You don't see cheddars like that. They're usually ordered ahead of time and the company makes it. That's from, I believe it even shows in the picture that's from Hennings. Yeah, Hennings Mammoth Cheddar. So that one there, usually they reserve that for grand openings of stores or special events. And again, it has to be ordered in advance. So I don't think Hennings just has them sitting in their cave.
Yeah,
It
we
only
got 10 in
takes-
stock. How many do you want? At $8,000 each, I'll take 5.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, no problem. And I've never had to cut into one of these. I know someone who has, and they explain the process to me, and it's
It starts
quite
with a
interesting.
chainsaw, right?
Yeah, you don't use the cheese board with the wire to cut this. Not, at least not until you get it down to its
So it's
final
instead of
form.
like the ice carvings that you see during winter, like they've got someone like carving the cheese that way.
Yeah. Well, so, and I'm going to be speaking American prices, of course, because that's what I know. But if you do the math here, this is $4 a pound in the store. Once they cut it up and everything, it's $4 a pound. And that sounds like a pretty decent price. But I've had people come through and look at, say, a smoked cheddar that we have for $13 a pound. And they balk at the price. And they go, oh, my God, I would never pay that. And you're looking, and in their cart, they have Kraft American Singles. And I'm like, what do you mean you wouldn't pay that? You're paying $10 a pound for that in there. Go do the math. Check me, guys. It's $10 a pound for Kraft American Singles, and it barely has any cheese in it. And I explained this to the lady, and she goes, oh, wow, I never knew that. Put the smoked cheddar back into the cheese case and walked away with her Kraft Singles. I'm like, you can lead a horse to water, Dave, but you can't get them to see the light or, drink the water in that case. But this mammoth cheddar cheese, although it's Hennings and with all due respect to Hennings, I think they're kind of subpar compared to most specialty cheeses. And to see them in a specialty cheese case to me is, I look at that as filler, because they still mass produce. Sure, do they take a special touch to it? It's wrapped in cloth, so they go the extra mile. But really, when it comes down to it, it's poor man's specialty cheese. So even at $4 a pound, though, that's a really good deal. And obviously, it's going to be a little bit cheaper because it comes in a 2,000 pound block. So they were able to sell in bulk, where normally this Hennings cheese is around about $7-8 a pound.
Wow.
But what I'm getting at is, if you think about it, so the story I gave you of the lady who had the $10 a pound Kraft American Singles when it grabbed the $13 a pound smoked cheddar that's actually cold smoked for 8 hours and goes through an aging process and everything, paying $3 extra a pound to get a pure 100% cheese versus some slime in a wrapper, But she, so anyways, the point I'm getting to here is the price of cheese. Even if you see some of the more expensive ones that are $30, $40, $50 a pound in a cheese case, you may think, oh my, this is insane. You get a little sliver for $10. It sounds insane, but when you do the math and you realize that milk is about $4 a gallon, right? Do the math there. Now, granted, that's not a pound, but you think about it, and the price of cheese should be 10 times the amount of milk. Well, look at the amount of milk you drink at $4 a gallon versus the amount of cheese you get for the price per pound, or per pound in general. And you think about it, and you should be paying roughly $30 to $50 a pound for cheese without considering the handcrafting that's involved, the time that it spends aging. I mean, anyone who's had a Scotch whiskey realizes how quickly the price jumps every year older it gets.
Yep.
So, not to mention that the farmers are already making pennies on the dollar off of everything they do, and they're taking even less than that to sell a wheel of cheese. It's just mind blowing to be. People should be paying $50 to $100 a pound for cheese. They don't realize how spoiled they actually are. And it just, every time I get into that conversation with a customer where they're like, oh, it's I can't believe it's $15 a pound. I just want to strangle them. I don't know how other way to put it. One thing of note I want to say is with cow's milk and goat's milk, it's roughly 10 pounds of milk for 1 pound of cheese. With sheep, it's actually more around 6 pounds, 6 pounds for 1 pound. So it's it takes a little less in the way of sheep milk. I can't explain why. I'm sure there's a reason out there that could be explained. But sheep milk is fattier. I know that. I don't know if that's the sole reason or if there's something else that comes to it, but that does make sense. So just another note of cheese making before we get into specific types of cheese. And I think, unless there was a question from you or the chat, I think that pretty much covers what I wanted to say on that.
All right, that sounds good. It's a good primer. A lot of comments in the chat. A lot of people sharing their love or their experience. A lot of people talking about what they prefer. Let's see here. I just wanted to acknowledge a few things. Clam Baked actually said something I was going to say. Cheese is an art form. It is truly artisanry. And people really don't seem to realize, probably because maybe they got used to the whole Kraft Singles thing. Maybe it's just their ignorance, but the amount of work that goes into this stuff and the amount of resources that are necessary to create cheese, people don't seem to understand that the good cheeses out there, reflect the artisanry that goes into it. And
there's many that are small batch cheeses that are only made in limited quantities throughout the year because there is no mass production. It's literally done the old-fashioned way, but when they come out, they're, like Clam Bake said, like you echoed, it's a work of art. And those are the ones that you see that are $30, $40 a pound because they are made in very limited batches, in some case by only 1, 2, or 3 people, just a family. And those get distributed across the country, if not the world.
Now, before we continue, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and that's another thing to the point of the price of cheese and how much you guys are stealing it off the shelf.
That's true. There's actually, I've known of massive heists that have gone on where tractor trailerfuls that have been stolen.
I did not share that portion of my notes, but we will get
Well,
there.
I'm just well aware. Okay, well, it's good that that you have that ready to go because these sorts of things, these heists for these these goods, again, are reflection about the cost of these things, the resale value, and the value that they have. And the same thing, just as a side note, applies to maple syrup because there's been multiple heists here, like multi-million-dollar organized crime heists of tractor trailer fulls or factory fulls of barrels of maple syrup. So I look forward to hearing your, because you're also an expert when it comes to criminal mysteries. So I can't wait for you to comment on that. So we ready to move on to the first cheese that you had suggested on your list?
There actually was one more thing I realized as we were talking there, and that's the Appellation d'Origine Contrôlée. You familiar with that? My French accent may be a little off there, but I'm hoping you know what I just said there.
No, I could not understand your American French, but I would suspect it's one of the regulatory organizations that basically approves what can be called what cheese.
Yes, this is the good AOC here, and basically to put it into English terms, it's the controlled designation of origin. In an American way of pronouncing it, Appellation d'Origine Contrôlée. So I did my best. I actually listened to someone pronounce it a few times before we went on air to see if I had it right, and I did my best there, but it probably sounded like that guy you were talking about yesterday more than anything else. So
you know what? I've actually seen this stamp, actually, the AOC stamp on cheeses, and it's pronounced Appellation d'Origine Contrôlée.
Yeah. That's what I said. That's just not how it came out.
Well, we have room at my French school, so.
I may have to sign up for that and try it out, see if it helps with my accent. I'm a lot better with Spanish than I am with the accents from Spanish. But and then also PDO, which goes into that. And these are basically, as I alluded to, the controlled designation of origin. People may be familiar with it when you talk about champagne versus sparkling wine. All champagnes are sparkling wine,
exactly.
But not all sparkling wines are champagne because of the designation and the protected nature of that product. You see this most in the European Union, the UK, and that sort of area. It's actually under law out there.
And you certainly see it with cheeses.
Yes, and I know of a company, and I won't allude to too much, but there was a company that was using a protected name several years ago, and it was an offshoot of that name, but it was so close that the European Union actually came in and sued this American company and forced them to change their name.
I remember.
And that was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Again, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about, but I'll leave it at that. But basically, I just wanted to touch on that. There's many cheeses that are this way: Parmigiano Reggiano, Pecorino Romano. You can get Parmesan from a U.S. company, but you can't get Parmigiano Reggiano.
Exactly.
You can get Romano here in the States, but you can't get Pecorino Romano without it coming from their designated places. And there's something to be said about that, too, because in Parmesan, I don't want to get too much into because we're going to get to it later on. But Parmesan that you guys have had out of that green bottle, or even a wedge that you got from some Wisconsin distributor manufacturer rather, pales in comparison to what Parmigiano Reggiano is.
Absolutely.
Even just the flavor alone, when you're using it, don't use the same amount. When you eat pizza and you just pile it with that Parmesan shit,
ugh,
you're not going to do that if you have a wedge of Parmigiano Reggiano.
Nope.
Or you're going to ruin your pizza. Or maybe you won't ruin it because it's a great taste. You're wasting the pizza. Then I guess
unnecessary. The cheese is so good that a minimal amount will burst with flavor, and plus with the cost of it, you don't need to be using so much.
Well, and that's something I've explained to people. I say you use half of this that you would use with American Parmesan, and you'll get the same flavor, and you'll also be paying about the same price for what you're doing with it, because you're saving money by using less. Of course, by using less, you've now reduced the price, maybe not the price per pound, but the price per use on it. And again, instead of getting sawdust and preservatives that you get in the green tub, you now have a legitimate cheese that was imported overseas, which is tougher than shit right now, but that's came overseas, is from another country, has been done the right way, and there's no preservatives. So people that shy away from the specialty cheese shop and go to straight to the dairy for their cheese, the only thing you need from the dairy is milk. I shouldn't say that. There's plenty of things in the dairy you could get, but when it comes to cheese, there's really nothing over there you need. They might have one or two things over there that are of like the high end of shit, which would be the very low end of a cheese case. But beyond that, you're not going to find much over there. Some stores keep their premium butters in the dairy as opposed to the cheese shop. So that might be something there. Your Kerrygolds or your what's that one from Parma? I can't remember the fucking name of it. But anyways, now I think we're good to move on to the list.
Hold your horses there, because I want to address a few things in the chat. So, we've got Jay Diz, who says, maybe because I'm black, but I eat limited amounts of cheese: provolone American, cheddar, pepper jack, cheddar jack, blue cheese, just to name a few. It continues and says, because he's asked if he's lactose intolerant, he says, but I'm not the biggest cheese person. I'm limited with what I know, the infinite amounts, and I had many cheeses, just not the biggest fan. I do want to comment on this, is that, I've looked into this, but apparently lactose intolerance is actually much more prevalent in warmer climates. So basically south of Europe, basically in Africa, Asia, South America, people of those climes, they are actually much more lactose intolerant than, say, people in Nordic countries, or, Northern Europe or even Southern Europe. They're much more tolerant of lactose than, peoples from all around the world, it's a very interesting thing and seems to indicate that this comes from evolution through climate and such. And I do find it interesting as well that, just as a side note, for example, the Finnish, they drink reindeer milk. So milk has been something that man has known of since, primordial times, basically. How does a child get fed? Through milk. And any animal, wild or domesticated, produces milk. So this has been something that humanity has been involved with for a long time. But making cheese obviously is a much newer thing, but it's still thousands and thousands of years old.
Well, and another thing with lactose intolerance is the more aged a cheese is, the less lactose it carries, just like cooking with alcohol.
Oh, I didn't know that.
With alcohol, the more alcohol that comes out of, the cooking process, obviously.
Wow.
So I'm not saying that if you're lactose intolerant, you could eat a wedge of Parmigiano Reggiano. Again, I wear a black coat, not a white coat. Check with your doctor. But people who have a mild lactose intolerance can get away with aged cheeses. I wouldn't suggest Bries for most people unless it's a very, very mild intolerance. But yeah, lactose through age actually escapes the cheese, for lack of better terms. Did you say the highest prevalence was in Europe, like northwestern Europe?
Yeah, the most lactose tolerant people are basically in Europe, basically from the southern portions of Europe all the way up to the Nordic regions.
Gotcha. Okay, I wanted to make sure we were on the same page there, but yeah.
I do want to address a few things. Shady says, actually, Dave, I know more black people, more black people I know are lactose intolerant than any other. But that's the thing, though. Perhaps that's just to cow's milk. Because, for example, I know that goat's milk is prevalent in Africa. And, that seems to be used in foods and, drank, by tribes and so forth, and just by people who live on the African continent. And I guess it seems to be much more digestible. But Will Tactics, half black Will, He says, I have to limit my cheese intake, otherwise I get bubble guts for a few days. Yes, and that's the like, because technically, if you really look to it, humans shouldn't consume too much milk, because we do have that sort of intolerance. All of us do. Some people are just more capable, more tolerant than others. But in the end, we are supposed to wean ourselves off milk when once we're no longer young, and move on to solids and such. But in a civilized world that we are now, cheese is something of a commonality, and as is drinking milk and a lot of other dairy. So it's just become sort of part of the culture, part of society, that there is there's an expected intolerance. But unfortunately, that has given the rise to drugs to say, oh, you get a bad reaction from this food, keep eating that food, but here's a drug. So, and I want to say a few more things before we continue. Do you want to answer this question now or later, Drew, because we're ready to move on. But Feslov asks, question for both DDR and Drew. Best cheese to use on Philly cheesesteaks?
Wow. That's kind of random. I didn't have that in my mind. Really. I guess it would depend on my mood. Maybe either a Swiss or something light, like a Munster, or even though Havarti's not super light, but something like a Havarti, maybe too. Yeah, no, I wouldn't say Havarti.
Not a provolone?
Something, maybe provolone. There are some stronger provolones out there, but a mild provolone, Munster. What was the other one I said to start? It's escaped me. Maybe even a pepper jack. Actually, I'd probably think pepper jack, because I want a little bit of spice in my Philly cheesesteak. I think spice actually helps.
That's why I
had
hot peppers. But my
but you could aid it along.
My preference is provolone, and I certainly do not consider this. What's it called? The Cheese Whiz.
Oh my God.
That's apparently that is what is common in the two famous places there in Philly, that they use I don't know if it's Velveeta or some other sort of liquid style cheese that's not really cheese. And I was gonna, before we move on, finally, Velveeta cheese. Your thoughts? Is it cheese?
No, it's not cheese. I've been known to use it in a con queso dip, usually in my younger years. But it's one of those things, and I was actually going to say this about American, I still have a soft spot for them because I was raised on it for so long, because we didn't eat specialty cheese when I was a kid. I didn't know about this shit, really the difference until, in the last decade. But I do have a soft spot for certain things when it comes to American or Velveeta or whatever. American grilled cheese, just the basic American grilled cheese, I still like. The homemade con queso dip that you'll make for the Super Bowl or whatever, I still enjoy that. But as far as suggesting it to people, if you want to actually make a true con queso dip or a true grilled cheese, I wouldn't suggest it. It's just, again, my taste buds have adapted to it over the years, and every once in a while, that sounds good to me.
Giadis says, Cheese Whiz is big in Philly on everything with other things beside cheesesteaks.
I'll tell you one thing. In the north end of Kansas City, there's this small chain. And when I say small, it's 2 locations, last I knew, called In a Tub. And it's a taco place. They do a lot of deep frying there, and it's all a la carte, no combos. And their taco cheese is macaroni and cheese powder, like Kraft macaroni and cheese powder. So obviously they're not a gourmet taco place by any means, but it does add an interesting flavor that I've never had on a taco before. But it's been years since I've had it, so it goes to show I don't have these cravings to go chase it down.
Good stuff. All right, so we're finally ready to go for the list. So I'm going to transition. Here we go.
I sent these to you in no particular order, but
no, I put them in the order that you wrote down in the chat. So the first one off is cloth-bound cheddar.
So really, I sent this just to cover cheddar in general, and you could have put up a block of cheddar, but everyone knows what that looks like. So I wanted to go more the route of like a cloth bound. But cheddar was originated in England, actually in the village of Cheddar,
Yep.
to be honest, in Somerset. And, it's gone from there. I mean, there's no sense in going through the whole history of it, because if I did this with every cheese, we'd be here all day.
Yeah, this is more Cheese 101 with Drew. We can eventually go to Cheese 201 and talk the history and all that stuff. But this is just more of an intro.
You can go as far back as King Henry II's records of purchase and see that he bought tens of thousands of pounds of cheddar, and Charles I bought cheese from the village also. These records exist, and you can find them. They're out there still to this day. But cheddar
I've seen
is
the lists of how they ordered for their feasts and their festivities and stuff, and yeah, it was just insane amount of quantity. Sorry, go ahead.
I love going back and seeing historical documents, or I wish we could have pictures from back then, but just the documentation alone to see these records, it's just really cool. But cheddar, the most popular cheese in the UK, for instance, over 50% of its annual cheese market is cheddar alone. In the US, it's second only to mozzarella. US produces approximately 3 billion pounds of cheddar cheese.
Wow.
So, and I think that the numbers may be surprising, but the statistical where they are, number 2 in America, number 1 in the UK, shouldn't surprise anybody, because cheddar is everywhere. It's on everyone's cheese board. It's not always on mine because I like to diversify a little bit, but any basic cheese board is going to have some form of cheddar on it. The types of cheddar that are around there, obviously you've got the cloth bound there on the screen. I believe you still have it. Yeah, the cloth bound cheddar is aged in cloth. It gives it a lot more of a smelly flavor to it. It gives it a lot more of a grittiness. You'll actually see on the rind sometimes different types of mold. And we actually get a lot of calls about people, being concerned of the color of mold on their cheese, because usually the thing is, if you see red or pink or colors of mold that certainly don't belong, that you should toss the cheese right away. But this is the one where we have to go back sometimes, call them up, and it could be from England or whatever, and call them up, be like, is this a normal color for your cheese, and send them pictures. And but more times than not, it's actually intended on the rind, but it gives it a lot grittier of a flavor. I'm trying to think of the way to put it. I suck at the comparison terms, but just much more unique to just what you expect from cheddar. It gives it a lot more of a smelly, stinky, stronger flavor. So that's cloth bound, but then you go through cheddars. There's aged cheddars. There's youthful cheddars. The more they age, the stronger they get. They also, and this also you'll see in Goudas as well, when they age, gets a crystallization. You notice that before, where it's got like a crunch?
Maybe closer to the outside, right?
No, within the cheese.
Thing?
Like once you get to about 18 months to 2 years old and then older, you'll notice a lot more of this crunch or crystallization inside it. And that is what's called tyrosine crystal. It naturally forms within the cheese. It's a chemical, but not something that's been put into it. It's a naturally forming chemical throughout the aging process. And the old wives' tale is that, well, it's not a wives' tale. It actually is truth. It's got the, you may have to help me with the term, but the aphrodisiac of, that chemical aphrodisiac that is in certain foods where, it makes you a little more sexually intrigued, I guess. And that's actually in the tyrosine crystal. So I always say, hey, get these cheeses, if you want to, have a better night or whatever. But it's a really interesting thing that pops up in these aged cheeses, and it really makes it stand out. So whenever you have a cheese with crystallization in it like that, more times than not, it's going to be a sharper cheese, a sharper cheddar.
Does it give it a more crumbly consistency?
I don't think it's the cause of it. I think the aging process itself is what gives it a lot more of a crumbly nature to the cheese. It does create some separation, I guess, to the cheese. So if there's a decent amount of crystallization in the middle of the cheese and you try to crumble it, it's obviously going to break in that spot. But really, it's more of a fun fact that I'm giving than anything else. It's nothing really, I guess, important other than you notice it. And so people sometimes go, what is this? Why do I have sand, or why do I have salt in my cheese? It's not. It's just a natural forming chemical in the aging process of cheese when it gets up to a certain point. And if you get like a 10 or 15 pound cheddar, or age 10 to 15 year cheddar,
wow,
you can actually see quite a bit of it in there. But it's also really expensive to get your hands on that stuff too. Sometimes $100 a pound when it gets that old. Then you got flavored cheeses. Actually, I should probably go to smoked cheddars, where
those are some of my favorite. I like old, or Vogt, strong. There's also other terms. I saw the term the other day, but how they describe cheddar, sharp. So, in Canada, it's old or Vogt. Vogt means strong in French, but they're referring to old. And then sharp is also, I guess, a similar synonym that they use as well. But it's that, I don't know how best to describe it, though, because, sharp cheddar, old cheddar, smoked cheddar. Well, let's leave smoked for a second, because that's an extra, feature. But old cheddar, it's got a nice, strong taste, but it's flavorful, and it's still cheddar. But it's just much more poignant, and it still maintains a nice creamy flavoring. It doesn't seem to get earthy, have the different sort of either smells or tastes that you could say with Limburger, for example. So,
yeah, not generally, unless you like wrapped it in cloth or something, you're not really going to get that.
But there's something about old cheddar that I just love. I don't like the mild stuff, the light stuff. It's the old stuff that I always go to first when it comes to just a simple cheese or cheddar brick.
My father's the same way. He likes the older, more aged or sharp. Kind of all fits the same thing. The more it ages, the more flavorful it gets. It really depends on the day with me. I'm going to be completely honest. It could be. I'm also not a huge fan of cheddar in general. I like more of the unique cheeses out there, like many that we're going to be getting into. So, yeah, I kind of lost my thought there. But
we were talking about cheddar and the different sharpnesses and how that aging affects it and so forth.
I was going to move on to smoked, and
Yes, please.
I was kind of battling this, in prep time. I was battling with myself whether we would do smoked as its own category or if we'd hit it on each cheese. And I think we could probably just cover it all right now, to be honest.
Let's go for it.
Because, the aging, or not the aging process, the smoking process is similar in a lot of ways. And then we'll come back to kind of the list. But now I think about it, maybe we should have had smoked its own category. But with cheddar, for instance, and with many of the others, it's a cold smoke, because you can't really just throw it in the smoker and let it keep
exactly. That's not how it works, people.
So they actually, the process that was explained to me, and this was from one particular cheesemaker. It may vary from others, but I have not dove headfirst into the different ways of cold smoking. But the one that was explained to me by a cheesemaker was they have the cheese already aged, and then they put it into this room, this cooler, to keep it at temperature. And on the outside of the room is a smoker that's running, and they pipe it in and they let the smoke fill the room, and they let it sit there for hours upon hours to gather that smoke flavor. So that was the process I was explained to by a cheddar maker specifically here in the States. But smoked Gouda, most of those go through the same process. There's actually smoked blue cheeses out there.
I've seen them.
They carry a very interesting flavor. I would recommend it for salad personally. But there's obviously a lot of different things. You could even stuff your burgers with it to give it a little bit of a smoked flavor. I think that'd be a great idea. They have smoked mozzarella. That is really good. and it really, as youthful as that cheese is, it really takes on the smoke. So in a lot of cases, a smoked mozzarella is going to have a much stronger smoke flavor because it's all throughout.
That's with anything that's smoked. I mean, even smoked Gouda, for example. Something about smoking cheese just takes it to the stratosphere.
Right. Something about mozzarella, though, at least the mozzarellas that I've had, the smoke flavor is a lot more dominant, a lot stronger. So if you like smoked flavor in your foods and you don't mind a little extra, mozzarella would be good. If you like more of a discrete amount of smoke, then there's probably not too many cheeses out there for you, but certainly not the mozzarella. I've actually had an aged. Most things that are smoked are more youthful in nature that I've seen in the cheese world, but there is one that I've encountered that's an aged cheese. So something that's aged, I think, 18 months, and then they smoke it on top of that. And I'm like, that's almost like adding Coca-Cola to your $100 bottle of whiskey,
Yeah.
But it's pretty good. It actually does enhance the flavor of that cheese. Now, this is also coming from someone who's not a huge fan of cheddar, so I'm not offended by the help that the smoke gives this cheddar. That English cheddar has a little bit of a different flavor to it than American cheddars, in my opinion. It tastes like it's gone through a lot more care and handling, where I feel like most American cheeses, not all, but a lot of American cheeses are more rushed and mass-produced and not given the same care. But that could just be me. I have no proof on that. Flavored cheeses, and again, this is probably an offshoot too, but since we're on smoke, there's flavored cheeses. It could be something as simple as pepper jack or habanero jack, or it could be something like a Wensleydale with cranberry or a Stilton with blueberry, which if you're familiar with what those are, they're really good to crumble in pancake batter. I think I've told you about that before, Dave.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was someone else, but if you've ever had one of those cheeses, those fruit cheeses that crumble really easy, they almost look like a blue cheese without the blue, and instead they're given fruit, and they crumble really well. I've suggested to put them into put it into a pancake batter. A lot of people get it during the holidays as a fruity cheese to have on their Christmas cheese platter or what have you. But it's not limited there to just those sorts of flavors. You've got there's a company called Tickler out there that uses onions and chives and ages it into their cheese, like a red onion, and it's aged into their cheese, and very, very dominant amount of onion, which I like, but it's also in an aged cheddar from this English company. So again, you're adding something to something that's already gone through a decent amount of aging process, but that's what they like to do. That's their forte, if you will. Trying to think of some of the other ones that are out there off the top of my head. Can you think of any flavored cheeses that you've had, Dave? Buy me just a second here to that you seem to like or be impressed with.
Honestly, not off the top of my head. I can't even remember some of the brands, but I know what they look like, and for example, with the I can't remember the brand, but there's several high-end brands that got the AOC stamp up here, and
that are flavored.
From what I've tried, but maybe I'm confusing things. Again, I'm not in my element here. That's why I called the expert. Fine. I called Saul.
No problem. I mean, Havarti's another one that uses a lot of them. They put dill in Havarti's, caraway seed, horseradish. There's horseradish cheddars out there. There's rubbed Fontinas that have
Fontina is one of my faves. Smoked Fontina. There's a monastery up here in it's in Canada. It's in Quebec, and it's the one I always gushed about to you, Drew, where the Benedictine monks actually make this cheese, and they sell it worldwide. It's won tons of awards, and it's some of the best cheese I've ever tried.
Yeah, and I don't think we get that one down here. So I remember us talking about that probably a year ago or so. It's been a while, but yeah. But yeah, Fontinas get rubs. There's actually a cheese out there. a lot of people are probably familiar with it. It's in every store. So if you've ever had any form of, at least in America, any form of specialty cheese, you probably had Sartori. And what they do, or I don't know, are you familiar with Sartori? Do they have that up there? It's from Wisconsin.
Name sounds familiar.
So they've got, they give themselves a very Italian feel to it, but it's an American cheese. And their Sartori Gold is basically their base cheese. And it's, man, I don't even know how to describe it. It's got some hints of like Parmesan to it, but it also kind of comes off like a cheddar. So it's its own cheese. There really is no category for this cheese other than to just call it a gradable cheese. But their Sartori Gold is the base cheese, and then every other cheese they have for the most part, with some exceptions, but most of their popular cheeses are the Sartori Gold that's dusted in a flavor. And the rind is a dusting of, say, espresso or Merlot or Chardonnay or balsamic vinegar.
I feel like I showed up to a black tie event wearing jeans and a T-shirt.
Yeah, I don't want to be mean to the company because they do move a lot of cheese, but they're kind of a step above Hennings, to be honest. And I'd probably be crucified if certain people heard that, but that's just the fact of the matter. You can't put a $30-$40 a pound handcrafted cheese next to Sartori and try and compare the two. But very popular. The Merlot flavor is one of the most popular ones in any store that brings it in. So that's why you see a lot of it. Because at the end of the day, the grocery stores, as much as they want to sell a bunch of specialty cheese, they know that there's certain things that are usually in the more affordable price that's going to give them movement. And that's what stores want, is movement. They don't want dust collecting things.
It's not just for the amount of supply. There's the demand. And, there's certain times of the year, like the holiday season, where these types of cheese are either being gifted or they're being provided during parties. And obviously, there's going to be much more demand at this point than there might be, say, in the middle of spring.
True. Well, the Sartoris are really popular year-round. Everything spikes during the holidays. One that I'll tell you that you see a huge spike in for the holidays, Brie aside, because Brie just goes to insane levels over the holidays, but is cheeses that have truffle in them. And this might be the flavored cheese that you had that had the designation on it, probably a Pecorino with truffle. Pecorino Romano with truffles.
I wasn't shifting through the garbage looking at the label. The plate was provided to me and I ate from it. So
gotcha. Okay. Fair enough. But truffle is a really good flavor to use. But you can, just like with anything else, you can really screw up truffles.
You sure can.
And very easily. And the first
it's
couple
overused,
of cheeses,
and and the quantity is overused as well. Just a slight amount of truffle is what's needed. Some people just go overboard.
Some of the first cheeses that I encountered that had truffle in them were too much. And these were reputable companies, and I don't know if they were just starting to experiment with it or what, but they really messed it up. But here recently, the last few that I've seen that have been put into certain cheese shops have really nailed it. A Pecorino with truffle. There's a company called Purano that has a truffle cheese. Purano is basically a Gouda, and they've got one that's got truffle in it. Much smaller wheel, obviously, because you're looking at $30 a pound. But again, nailed it. There's Bries are coming out now with truffle in them, which is amazing to me because Brie in and of itself, the rind is basically mushroom, to a layman terms at least. So to add truffle to that, that's really ballsy, and I've seen companies pull that off too. But we're supposed to be on the cloth bound cheddar, and you still got that image up there. I think I touched on pretty much everything we could about cheddar without diving too deep, though.
All right. Well, no, you started good too. Also giving everyone, basic information. Like, there's a village actually called Cheddar. That's where this originated from.
I'll give you one fun fact: is President Andrew Jackson once had an open party at the White House and served a 1,400-pound block of cheddar.
I've heard of that story.
So, just a little fun fact there. But beyond that, I think I kind of hit what I needed to on cheddar. So.
All right. So the next one I cannot pronounce.
It's
you're gonna have to pronounce it for me.
It's actually pronounced yay toast. So, yay, we're gonna have toast. Yay toast.
Yay toast.
And it is, if you ever hear someone come up to you and go, I'm trying to find a Norwegian cheese. Not that people would come up to you and do that because you're not in the stores doing what I do. But if anyone ever comes to you asking about a Norwegian cheese, odds are this is it. Like 100 to 1 chance that this is what they're asking about. And this is actually something I did not know what to expect out of this. And I want to see the picture you have. Oh, that's a great picture of it. So this is actually a very sweet cheese. It's used up in the Alps, the skiers. This is like, you know how pimento cheese is like the golfer cheese or whatever. And then the, what is the mint julep or whatever for is the drink of the Downs. What is it? The Kentucky Downs or whatever they call that.
Oh, the Kentucky
Derby race. No, it's something Downs.
Not too sure.
But nevertheless, maybe it is. Maybe the Kentucky Derby has the mint julep also.
Yep.
But this is the cheese for skiers in Norway, and the best way to explain this is it basically tastes like caramel. I think it tastes like Werther's original flavor. It's Werther's original, basically in cheese form, and with some cheese notes obviously to it. It's made from goat's cheese, and it the best way to do this is to actually slice it in small slices and add it to pieces of apple is the way I generally recommend people to eat this. But it's from a valley in Norway over 100 years ago is where it originated. Butterscotch, dense, rich texture. Yeah, I'm using a cheat sheet.
If you look at the screen that I'm putting up right now, which might take a little bit longer because I guess today's stream was a little bit more delayed than usual, but it's going to show the this particular cheese that you're referring to. It's called Ski Queen, and it's the Gjetost whey cheese, and it's on a board with
bananas.
Little bowl with the cheese in there. Looks like, and. Actually, I'm not sure if that's caramel in the bowl, but it's partnered with bananas and apple slices, and you see some of the cheese there as well. So this seems to be, I guess, a common thing when it comes to this cheese, to pair it with sweet things.
Yes. Again, a very dominant flavor of butterscotch in it. So,
but it's cheese.
It's cheese. It's 100% goat's milk, but it's just the
it's
way
from goats. Wow.
Yeah. They also call it brown cheese in Norway.
Why is it sweet though?
I wish I could tell you. It's the way they age it. It's the way it's produced and made. I don't believe there actually is any butterscotch in it. It just takes on that flavor.
That's amazing.
And again, this is where I get a little bit exposed because I don't know the cheese making process of many cheeses.
Your quality assurance, you're not expected to go to every factory and inspect, their processes and such. And there's only so much that we can all know. So, but hey, you're at least giving us definitely good information, and I'm learning a ton of shit. Chad in the chat says, I've had this before. It's odd but enjoyable. Tastes exactly like caramel. It's great on toast.
You ever want to fuck with someone too? I don't know if this picture you've got, it's 500 grams. So if anyone could imagine 500 grams, it's what, maybe 4 ounces. It's a very small square of cheese. And if you really wanted to fuck with someone, like in an eating competition, say, here, I'll give you this little 4 ounce piece of cheese, and I'm going to eat an entire pizza. Who do you think will win? The person eating the pizza will probably win because it's so rich. I actually sat down with a neighbor one night over some beers, and we ate this cheese, and we weren't even putting it on anything. We were just slicing it off and eating it. Between the two of us, we got halfway through the cheese and had to stop drinking the beer. We were so full.
Oh, wow. That sounds like Homer Simpson. Also,
we were kind of pissed because we had to end the night sober. We were kind of looking to, get a little drunk that night.
Rushin Chu just told me that it's Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky.
Yes, Arushin Chu, thank you. Yes, Churchill Downs. I knew I was. What is in it, says Will Tactics. Goat's milk, 100% goat's milk.
Also, just before when you're ready to
Well,
move on, let me know. But I just wanted to remind people that the place that I continue to love to gush about um, is called, just had the name. Ugh, good job, Dave. Abbaye de Saint-Benoît du Lac. So it's the Abbey just- of Saint Benoit of the Lake. Benoit. So yeah, check it out. Just look up Quebec Monastery cheese. It'll be the first link, and go to the products, and then the cheese page, and you will see exactly what I'm referring to. All right, so Drew, what would you like to do? Would you want to continue to
uh,
speak of Yay Toast, or
other than one last thing I wanted to mention, Yay Toast in Norway is 100% goat's milk. The Ski Queen variety that we get in America is actually a blend of cow and goat.
oh,
But other than that, it's intended to be 100% goat cheese. So yeah, we can move on after that.
all righty. So the
Oh, I
next,
spelt it wrong in my notes.
um, I believe we've got
Camembert.
Camembert, right?
Yeah, even though I spelt it wrong too, I just
Yeah, I
noticed
knew
that.
exactly
But
what you were
yeah,
referring to, anyways.
Camembert is one of my favorites. It falls into the brie category, and I guess we could just go to bries in general from this. But I
Hold
wanted
on,
to
is a
specifically,
Camembert a brie?
yes.
But
Well, I mean, not specifically, no, but it falls under the category in cheese shops because you can only have so many categories. You can't go
tell
down
that to the
to,
Italians.
well, I mean, they also have more vast cheese shops, but in America, at least, and what I'm used to be able to categorize things so far down, we just don't have. It would just be more than an American can handle, I guess. So we categorize it. It is similar to look and taste to a brie cheese. You can certainly compare it to such, but it's really its own thing. Camembert de Normandy is about 10% of the production of this cheese, but it's if you take a brie and you give it a stinkiness that you would expect from something like a Limburger, and then give it a flavor of meatiness, I guess, and even a little bit of sour to it, depending on the age in which you get it. A lot of Camemberts, though, in America are American produced, or if they are imported, they're done in an American light, where they basically just taste like a wheel of brie. I've gotten those before. The little 8-ounce wheels that you can get that are sold in bulk. In most grocery stores, even lower end grocery stores, have at least that little 8-ounce wheel of brie. And some chains will actually sell a Camembert that tastes basically like it. Why? Why even call it that? Why even bother? You're not selling it. It'd be like putting Coca-Cola on a Sam's Choice cola label. You just don't do it. They don't compare. But yeah, Camembert is one of those, and I'm trying to think of how to really put it into words. And now I'm sitting here in front of
Okay,
you.
while you do
I'm
that, I'm
stalling
going
a
to say
little bit
this.
on
Camembert is one of my favorite cheeses ever. I love its consistency. It tastes amazing when it's baked. I love just taking this, like even the rind I like.
Oh yeah.
And just slicing a piece of Camembert. It's got this milky, creamy. It's a creamy taste, and there's no. I wouldn't say sweet. It's more milky, more buttery type flavoring. It's not earthy. Ones I've had aren't piney or anything like that, and I
No.
actually prefer Camembert over brie.
I could see that too, especially if you like the. You mentioned milky and creamy in flavor, but in the literal sense of it, it's actually creamier and milkier. It's softer than brie.
Yes, exactly. That
And
that as well.
and it's I wouldn't say easier, but it compared to brie, it melts. I guess easier would be the word. It melts easier. So if you're looking to make it softer, and either pour it on something, like pour may not be the word, but put it on something in a very soft, warm nature. It's a lot easier than Brie to do so. The flavor is a lot more complete too, especially when compared to like run-of-the-mill Bries. They're just such a basic flavor where there's a lot more going on with the Camembert. And I'm glad you added some of the flavor components because I really suck at describing them sometimes.
Well, you do business to business, so they just know the people you sell your cheese to don't need one of those guys that's hired specifically to sit in front of the store and just say, "Would you like a sample? Let me explain to you what this is," and so forth. So, I can understand that you're not fully up with whatever the sales pitch or whatever about the flavor descriptions and how to that sort of thing. But,
well, and I've actually been trained in that, and here in the Midwest, I don't know about
I'm sorry,
the coast.
man.
Maybe,
I really
maybe
made you look bad. I was trying to save you, but
no. But I'm gonna be honest here. I'm not gonna.
Did you go to cheese school or
bullshit it.
something? Is there a cheese school?
There are classes. There's actually what's called a CCP, a Certified Cheese Professional. It's just like a wine connoisseur.
That's
you
cool.
actually go through the certification. I don't have that. I've been offered it many times. I just
You're too good for that
haven't
stuff.
done it yet.
You're the Gordon Ramsay of the cheese.
My first boss was from, I don't want to go too much into it, but he basically had that coastal mentality of sell, shove, and make yourself sound like you're the most smartest motherfucker in the world when it comes to cheese. And that doesn't work in the Midwest. In the Midwest, they want someone to level with them. Tell me what it is, give me the best thing, and get me the fuck out of here. And on the coast, it's more of the mentality of they would rather be lied to. And they would rather buy something from someone who, looks the part or speaks the part. And I could do that, but I'm not going to sit here and bullshit a bullshitter either. So,
but you also look at the numbers. You're like, okay, we've got these sales. Like this stuff is going, fast. So if you want it because there's clear demand, well, you gotta, let's start to deal with this stuff. Let's pony up. You're business minded.
I've actually told people don't buy this cheese. You're not going to like it. Your customer base won't like it. You're in a part of the city that could not move this. And I've actually sold more by telling people not to buy things, because ultimately what they do is wow, this guy's on it. So what should I buy? Well, buy this, buy this, buy that. It gives you
the opening.
And yeah, and now they trust you.
And once they see
I
the
do
sales,
the same thing to their customers.
Sorry?
I do the same thing to their customers too. I'll look them straight in the eye and say, well, you're wanting this. Well, don't grab that. It's twice the price, and I'd love you to buy it, but no, we're going to go over to this cheaper one here because this better suits your needs. But
yeah, so back to Camembert.
Actually,
what?
Oh, if you got more, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, were you going to continue to talk about a related topic, or?
Nope, I was ready to move on actually from Camembert unless you had more.
No. What about flavored Camemberts or smoked Camemberts? That is.
I've never encountered that.
No. Okay.
No. Wouldn't be against it.
I'm sorry.
Wouldn't be against it.
Okay. What about the whole idea of eating it baked, for example? You put it in the oven and then you can just dip into it and such. Is that your thing too? Or do you prefer just
like to
slices?
Actually, with me, I would actually, generally with Camembert when I have it. Now, I'm not saying this is my preferred method, but sometimes I don't go this route, especially if I'm like in the hotel room and I'm just bringing a piece home or something. But generally I'll just sit down and have wedges of it or pieces off of it, and then maybe have just a light jam of some sort with me. But I like the cheese just straight up. I don't like a whole bunch of pairing. If I'm at home and I'm doing it the way I want to, I'm going to warm it up with roasted garlic cloves.
Sounds good.
But I'll be honest, that's not the common way of doing it, because usually I'm going from hotel to hotel room, and if I grab some, I'm just going to be eating it off of a cracker or something,
Yeah. But I could decimate one of these little wheels of Camembert. And yeah, Brie isn't bad, but if I get the choice, I'm running to Camembert. And this is the problem. It's one of those things where if I'm not careful, and I'm fairly good with my self-control and such, but I'm stepping into the danger zone when I approach a camembert wheel like this, because it's very possible that I will polish the thing off without even realizing it, and then face the repercussions for the next few days. So, yeah. Actually, I do have to. I didn't even expect this today because I just wanted to give you guys, a show, a gift, no drama, proving my point again correct that I can do anything but drama. But again, this is a subject that I enjoy. I'm glad that Drew's off this week, that I have the time that we can actually do this, and again, it's this great opportunity for me to learn. So I'm a whore for that sort of thing, and but we got a donation, so I'm gonna first have to. For my fellow Latino, we have to do one of probably, although it's not the topic today. We're gonna have to show the dancing empanada. Where's that go? Oh, did it? There we go. Empanada dance. Thank you to The Goon, who says the following. The 12 devious streams of Rose continues. Drew, if I wanted cheese, would you be able to ship out to the East Coast? And if so, what kind of shipping costs would be looking at?
I mean, through me personally, it would be literally me and you just making a deal, and I go grab some stuff and send it to you. But as far as like my company or whatever,
hey, they don't need to know. Your company doesn't need to know. Like use your discount, and
But if you want me to grab some things for you and send it to you, then it'd just be like person to person kind of stuff. I'd probably have to
cut. You're part of the dairy mafia as well. The cheese mafia. So you got to get your cut.
Hey, I'll make sure I buy my cheeses that way. It contributes to my sales or whatever. But yeah,
a good way to see it.
The shipping would probably be rough though, because you would have to get a special bag and ship it with ice packs. And that's obviously going to add weight. Maybe if it was just like Parmigiano Reggiano or something, I might be able to throw it in a box and send it, and it'll be fine by the time it gets to you, because it really doesn't need to be refrigerated as much as the federal government here in the United States wants it to be refrigerated. It doesn't. And we'll get more into Parmesan here in a bit. But yeah, it'd be basically a man-to-man deal. It wouldn't be anything special I could do for you.
Yeah, and also postal rates, I guess, that are usually dependent on weight. So that, cheese isn't too light. So I'm sure that will affect shipping costs and such. But
it would be heavier than the championship belt I sent, and that would have cost me $40 if I didn't get my money back. So
$40 in total?
Total to ship it, yeah. I also went. Well, I went the overnight route because the person, the clerk or whatever at the post office leveled with me, and they said there's no way it's going to get there tomorrow with our shit. So overnight it and then put in for a refund and you get paid back. So that's what I did, and I shipped that motherfucker same week for free. No one else can say that in the history of that show. Thank you.
That's true. But I don't know. I mean, $40 sounds quite pricey. Is that with insurance, by the way?
I believe it came with insurance, yeah, but
okay.
it was also the cost for overnighting. So
yeah, so that's too. So it's inflated. So it doesn't set like if that was the weight of it's heavier than the belt that you're referring to, that would be reduced under 40 for not overnight, which means that doesn't sound too bad because the weight of that belt. Well, okay, level with me. Is it? You've explained to me how much, and us, how much cheese is per pound relative, to the cheese and so forth. Is it justifiable, under $40 to ship that amount of cheese, or is it somewhat excessive?
I think, and I would have to speak a little more to specifically what the Goon has around him, but odds are what I'm able to grab for him, he could find in his local area. So it probably wouldn't be worth it. Now, if he just wanted Drew to do some cheese shopping for him and get him some cheeses, I could do that. But again, yeah, I mean, I don't think the shipping costs would be worth it, because it'd almost be better for him to just hit me up and go, what are some cool cheeses you'd like me to try? And, here's the area I live in, where can I find them? I think that would probably be more worth his
money.
Because then he could get more cheese
for
that
that extra $40 for the shipping. I mean, well, no, not that way. And the quantity that he's getting at the weight that he'd save money by buying it locally, and yeah, and not paying the extra shipping, which he could then utilize that money for buying more cheese. So
yeah. And at this point in America, not too many people are too far away from a decent cheese shop that they could get cheeses from. You'd have to live in like bumfuck Egypt, I don't know, Western Kansas or something, to really have to go as far as Wichita or Denver to get something. But beyond that, I mean, most people are within an hour, if not less, especially in a big city. You're for sure going to have one. But even if you live out in the sticks, it's just a short drive to your next big city generally to get something like that. So
all right, shall we move on to the next one?
Absolutely.
All right, so I want to be absolutely sure I'm following the proper list here. So the next one is Taleggio. How do you pronounce it?
Yep, the second one there is
Taleggio.
So that, and actually I'd roll Limburger into this one too, because they all kind of come into a category called washed rind cheeses.
Hold on, explain that. Say the term again and please explain that.
Washed rind cheese. So washed rind cheese is basically a cheese that during its aging process, it actually is washed with a brine of some sort, whether it's a saltwater brine or a beer brine or a spice brine, wine, brandy, whatever you might be using to wash this brine, or wash the rind with rather. But Taleggio, for instance, uses I'm trying to remember. I think it's just salt water with Taleggio. But they basically get washed. And if you've ever seen, well, and you've got them on the screen too, or at least I imagine you will here in a minute, the washed rind cheeses have a very dirty.
I didn't press the transition button. Sorry, Drew.
Okay. It has a very dirty, if not moldy rind. And again, it varies by the cheese, but it has a much well-profined rind that usually carries some of the characteristics of the brine, obviously, that it has in it. Like for Taleggio, for instance, it actually has kind of almost like a sandy rind. When you bite into it, you can feel grittiness across your teeth. And the inside of it, there we go, I got it now. You can see some of the little hints of mold on it. There are some Taleggios, especially the ones that get imported into America, they just don't come off looking as good as this. But, they will have certain amounts of mold on there. And as long as it's not dry or crusty, it's fine. It's still, it just grabs a little bit more of the mold. And just like a blue cheese, there's nothing wrong with this mold that's on it. And it's a part of the cheese. That's why you see this one that's probably right there after it was done being made. And it still carries small amounts of mold that you can see throughout the rind of the cheese. Now, Taleggio, as far as that cheese goes, it comes in a square. I believe that's specifically what you have on the screen right now. It's named after a valley in Italy, an Italian region of Lombardy. It's an alpine valley, for lack of better terms. But what I like about these cheeses is the amount of meatiness that they carry, and they're typically stinky. As I mentioned, Limburger falls into this category as well, which last time I checked was still certified by Guinness Book of World Records as the stinkiest cheese on the planet. I would argue that, though, at this point. Because I've smelt a lot of cheeses, and there's certain ones that waft through the entire store. And maybe it's because Limburger generally comes prepackaged to Americans, and we're not sitting there cutting it in store. But even when I've opened up a piece of Limburger and smelt it, it does not have that wafting smell that some of the Alpine cheeses do. Another one I want to mention is Munster. So you're familiar with Munster.
Are we moving on to that one, or?
That actually wasn't even in my list, I don't believe.
But do you want me to show the image of that? Because I thought we were talking about...
I guess I did send you a picture of it, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. So we're talking about
Yeah,
Taleggio
this is
right now, but did you want to move to that or?
they. And this is my bad. I should have clarified this. This one, the Taleggio, the Moonster, and the Limburger are all in the same category, and I think it's a
Okay,
little
perfect.
easier
All
to
right.
just
So,
categorize
well,
them
then let me
together.
just move this image here. Okay, so we're looking at Taleggio right now. You just said you mentioned Limburger, and we're gonna switch over to that real quick, and then we'll show the Munster. Okay. So
Mhm.
this is now. So Taleggio is what's on the screen right now. This is now Limburger. And those look like some hefty cheese slices right there. It actually looks quite good, but I'm sure that the smell is probably off-putting for many people. I'm not down too much when it comes to, some cheese smells because sometimes they're way too overwhelming. Some blue cheeses, it's just too much for me. Um, there's other cheeses as well, Limburger, that just really have a strong, I guess, what would you say, Drew, a sour smell? Aroma.
Um, I mean,
It's
it varies a little bit
tart,
by the
but
cheese, but almost like the smell you're saying from a wash rind cheese. Actually, it. I've had a lot of people compare it to the smell of stinky feet or a gym
there we
bag.
go. Okay, yeah, that's a good comparison. So you should see the image. I don't know how slow my stupid stream is today.
It's already there.
It's there. Okay, so that is the Limburger, and then finally we're going to show the Munster. And yeah, all of them show the exact same sort of features on the rind itself,
Hmm.
indicating what you were referring to about the wash rind. How do you say it again? Is
Wash
it
rind.
wash rind cheese? That's the term, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
In the past tense, washed rind. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, there we have Munster. Now, because they're all basically the same, in the same sort of category, but obviously not the same cheeses, can you describe the differences between them and flavoring, if possible? Like just, how they're distinct from each other?
Not a whole lot actually, to be honest. They do have some small notes, like a cheese snob would probably notice some of the different notes. That'd be like saying, what's the difference from this Cabernet Sauvignon to another Cabernet Sauvignon? So, I mean, they're going to be very discreet, especially to the layman cheese eater. They're all basically going to be the same thing, just in different shapes. The Taleggio, I would say, tends to carry a lot more of a moldy exterior to it. The rind is a lot more pronounced and gritty, where something like the Moonster that you see on your screen is going to be probably a little closer to the Limburger. In terms of the rind is a lot thinner, although it does carry a very significant flavor to it. I made the mistake one time of saving some of the rind from a Moonster cheese and saving it a day or two in the fridge and then coming back to it, and it already turned.
Oh,
I took one bite and I took a good bite out of it too because I
oh
was so
no.
ready for it. I can't believe I didn't smell it. Took a big old bite out of that thing, and I've never ran to the trash so fast in my life. Because especially a cheese soft like a wash rind or a brie, when it turns, it's basically the smell and taste of cat piss.
I've never tasted cat piss, so I don't
Well,
know.
okay. Well, it's what I would imagine it to be, I guess I should say.
Sure, that's
But
that's the story we'll go with, people.
yeah, that is exactly. Um,
I'm gonna actually
in store.
I'm gonna put all three images right now so that there's a nice comparison.
Okay,
Um,
and I apologize for not mentioning that
no,
earlier.
that's fine. No, see,
I
that's the
also
thing.
really
This
didn't
is
know
why
where
I'm
we were going
here.
to go
This
with
is why
this.
I'm here to learn. I am the student. You are the master. So, yeah, and this is great to know because I could look at a cheese and say, yeah, they look similar, but unless somebody like you tells me, yeah, actually they're made in the similar method, there's slight different flavoring and tasting, consistency and stuff, but essentially they would be, fall under the same sort of category. So I appreciate
Right.
that.
Yeah, like speaking of the cheddars, you could have 5 or 6 English cheddars sitting in a case, and they're going to taste very, very similar. And again, unless you're just a real cheese snob, you're not really going to be able to point out those differences. And that's where I would kind of put these three, for instance, and I could name many more that fall under this category because this is my favorite category of cheese. When people go,
Oh,
"What's your
really? This
favorite
is your
cheese?"
favorite?
This is.
Okay.
When people go, what's your favorite cheese? I can't answer that. And quite honestly, if I had to pick one, it may not even be a washed rind cheese. But when talking about, the best way for me to answer that question is to take people to the washed rind section. But I had that asked actually several times this last week prior to Christmas. They go, well, show me your favorite cheese. Like they're asking for suggestions or whatever. Well, just show me your favorite. And this is after they've grabbed like a Monterey Jack and a cheddar. And I'm like, I don't know if this is going to be for you, but I'll take you there. So what was I saying? We were talking about the Munster. So with the Munster, and people are going to go, Munster? Wait, Munster doesn't look like that. Well, they're two totally different cheeses. Matter of fact, the only similarities between Munster and Munster is that they're similar to Jack. They're semi-soft and they melt well. Otherwise, Munster is produced in Wisconsin. It came to Wisconsin via French immigrants in the late 1800s. It uses whole cow's milk, has a mild flavor, much firmer than Munster.
So is it just the spelling difference? So I guess it's the U with the two little dots on top?
Yeah, it's just basically, the two little dots, and then there's no E in Munster. Because Munster, produced in France, was originally made by Benedictine monks, which I was about to get into as a way to save milk. It's made from unpasteurized or pasteurized cow's milk. It comes from France, Eastern France, cows that live in Eastern France, I should say. Much stronger flavor than Munster. The differences are insane. The only similarities is the softness of the cheese. And that, I guess you could compare it to Jack cheese, and that was actually from an article I had pulled up from AaronNundy.com if anyone really wants it. But just to make it a little simpler for me, but I don't even know if I'd really compare it to a Jack cheese. I would compare Munster to it, but not Munster, unless we're talking about firm or the semi-soft nature of the cheese. But anyway, so Munster, which is the one that you've got on the bottom portion of the screen right now. That was actually created by ancient monks in the Middle Ages, and it was a way to save milk. And another thing to mention about the monks was that they either didn't eat meat or ate very, very little meat, and they'd get a craving for that meaty flavor, obviously, as most humans would, unless you're vegetarian and you're lying to yourself. But that's a different story for another time. But the ancient monks would actually use the washed rind process to amplify the flavor of the cheese. That's why you get that stinkiness. And if you ever eat any of these cheeses on your screen, you're going to taste a meatiness to it, especially if it's fresh. As it's aged or matured, it actually gets a little more of a sour flavor, I guess, but not necessarily. It just, the flavor enhances and shifts a little bit. But if you get this at the peak of its age, it's going to be a lot meatier and satisfying to someone who's maybe limited from eating meats, such as these ancient monks. There's a lot that I could go into on that. I don't know how far I want to bore people on like the Trappist monks and that, but Limburger, the one that is on the top right of your screen, was used by the Trappist monks. But a very ancient idea to cheese that's still used today. And again, reflects in the price to some degrees, but some of them, like Taleggio, come in at a very affordable price. You start seeing the jump in price when you go to, say, a Limburger or a Munster, where a little 8-ounce wheel Munster could be well over $10. Camembert kind of teeters on this category as well. And again, if you're getting a true Camembert from Europe, it's going to be, an 8-ounce wheel is going to be at the very least $10. So again, you're talking in the $20 to $30 a pound range. But that's just a broad overview on the washed rind category, but there's articles out there that you can read. I brushed up on one from newdailycompass.com that really dives into it. But the wash rind category, not only from an educational standpoint, but to me, a flavor standpoint, is very intriguing. Put it over a French baguette and just eat it as is. If the flavor is going to be a little offensive to you, or if you like it, but other people in your household want to eat this cheese but aren't as tolerant as you, maybe and again, a mild jam. And that's because I just don't want people to, I hate things taking away from letting the cheese be the star. But if you're going to have like maybe an apple butter or I would say spiced cherry, but that almost seems like too much. Like cherry can be really sour. But
Clam Bake says in the chat, Munster cheese on a burger with caramelized onions all day.
You know, it's funny he mentions that because our next one on the list, which does also in some venues fall under the wash rind category, raclette, is actually well known for being melted on steaks. And basically anything in the wash rind category is great to melt onto a steak. I will save raclette for its own specific spot, though. But
I just transitioned to that.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. We can go to it and just use that as a transition point. But with raclette, it's very popular over the holidays as we're just now coming out of them. There is a process with this cheese after it's already produced, but when it's in a store or when it's in a restaurant where they actually melt it. Traditionally, this was over an open fire where they would melt it and scrape from there. More modern things, they have basically what amounts to, for lack of better terms, almost like a curling iron for cheese. But you run it across and you scrape with this hot iron, if you will, or bar, and you run it over the raclette to melt it off of its wheel. Or if you bought a wedge, run it off of the wedge and melt it onto, say, a steak or...
do you see the image right now?
I do. I can. There you go. You've actually got it right there.
Well, here's I'm going to transition now because I've had that image up for quite some time. Every time you move to a new topic, I'm going to show that cheese. But I've never had this type of cheese on a steak before. I think steaks are just God's gift to us. So I don't really think, other than a little bit of salt from the tears of my enemies, I don't think there's much else that that steak needs if it's a proper cut. But then again, I've never tried this, so I don't know. So what I'm doing right now is showing an actual image, which should come up in a few minutes at least, of exactly what you're describing. They're putting it actually on steak that's been cut up, and they're basically just melting it on there and such. So can you describe or explain to me a little more about this? Because you're telling me that this is a popular thing, and I'm totally ignorant, so I did not know this. I did not know that steak had raclette applied to it. So is this a common thing? Is this something that actually enhances the flavor? If so, how does it enhance the flavor? Talking to a steak man like myself who thinks steak is already perfect as it is, but how does this actually enhance such a dish?
Well, first of all, as far as it being a popular thing, I don't know that it's popular. Raclette is very hard to sell, at least in the Midwest.
Why? Flavor, availability, price, ignorance.
Ignorance, yeah, ignorance. There, you got it. I was about to say it. Ignorance, uneducated public. It goes back to what I was saying earlier about people just being accepting of American cheese at $10 a pound when they could get perfectly good cheddars for less than that, and they're better. They're full 100% cheese. But I think it all goes down to ignorance. Whenever there's been a couple times we've actually brought this out where we've, warmed up the cheese and started scraping it off like you're seeing here. And that really helps to move the product. People get fascinated. People get educated. What I tell a lot of the cheese stewards out there is, you're slicing and cutting cheeses and putting them out. But at the end of the day, the cheese is going to sell if you don't tell people about it. You're an educator. You're the one department in this store that actually holds an education role. You go to the deli, they don't need to tell you what the smoked turkey tastes like. Everyone knows what fucking smoked turkey tastes like. You don't go to the floral department, and although you may go, what's perfect for weddings or what's perfect for this or that, you don't need to know what a fucking flower is to buy a bouquet of flowers for someone. uh, anywhere, the meat department, they may tell you a little bit about cuts, but they don't have to educate you on fucking buying a steak. Cheese, though, on the other hand, you look at a raclette, you're not going to just buy it just because it's got a cool name or something. But as far as steak, I personally don't put anything on my steak like this. It would have to be some cheap, like $5 a pound gristle steak for me to even consider it.
Wow.
I keep the steak sauce in the fridge for emergencies only, where maybe the steak got overcooked and it needs help. But if you're doing, I'm with you. If you're doing a proper steak, you don't need shit on it other than a knife and a fork. That's the only thing that should ever touch it.
Absolutely.
After the cooking process. But as I'm looking at this picture here, I'm going to challenge that that's a raclette, Dave. That looks more like a gorgonzola.
Really? Because that's what I typed into. To Google Images, raclette steak, and this is what I got. So let me see if I can find something else.
That's fine. But that
no.
does
But hey, you
help add to
maybe
it here.
maybe this is just a bunch of dumb I don't know journalists who really don't know what it is that they're doing. So here I've got another one here. And this is actually called a raclette dinner. So, and the steak looks way, way better than the one I just showed, because that one just looks like somebody with, cerebral palsy was trying to cut the steak. Sorry, I couldn't think of any other sort of physical afflictions. But let me just show you this here, because this one, because I can see the difference from the cheese. The one you're referring to, it looks much more grainy, I guess. So give me a second. Let me show this one here. How does this one look? And in fact, I'll save you some time. I'll just put it in the chat here because our stream is going nice and slow. So in the chat right now, in the
only
Skype
about 10,
chat.
15 seconds.
Well, it's too slow for our accelerated ways. So in our Skype chat right now, I just put in the image that it's going to come up on the screen in just a short moment. Yep. And yeah, I want to know, does that look closer to what it should be?
Yeah, it should be plain white. As I said, the previous image looked a little more like a gorgonzola or something, because it did have some
the insides looked different, right?
Right.
It looked a little more
like
crumbly, solid. Let me put them up in comparison just so that people can see what they both look like. So where's that other one here? Raclette.
While you're looking for it, there appeared to be some form of like molding going on the inside. The only thing that kept me from thinking maybe for sure it was gorgonzola was there's usually more molding inside a gorgonzola than that, but gorgonzola is something that's put on steaks.
The raclette looks like a bar of butter. Sorry, what did you just say about putting on steaks? The gorgonzola, or
people have been known to put gorgonzola on steaks.
Well, Chad was just saying that in the chat. He enjoys that, and I'm not a fan of gorgonzola personally. It's well, some people would describe it as putrid. The taste is very. Some people said it's got like a waft of ammonia, and the taste to me is, it's not sharp. It's just, I guess, a sour taste. I'm really not a fan of the really, the cheeses that are aged with mold. It's not the mold issue that bothers me, but it's the flavoring and the odor that really dissuades me from doing that.
This creates a little bit of a sidebar, but I will mention this, that blue cheeses, especially when you're talking specialty, if you're talking what's on the salad bar, that's American or whatever, basic blue cheese. And don't ever let that flavor alone determine whether you like blue cheese or not. And I'll tell you a story. There was this 18-year-old girl who was opening up a cheese shop with us, and she was going to be the manager of that cheese shop.
At 18?
And
good luck, lady.
Yeah. Well, actually, she was the backup at 17, and when she turned 18, the actual lead had moved on, and she took over. So she had to have been the youngest person in the country, because you got to be out of school, and she was one of those that turned 18 after graduating. So yeah, she was barely 18. But anyways, she
that sounds like the start of a questionable rock song.
I know. I realize that. That was the hesitation there. I'm like, how is that going to be clipped and taken out of context? But She was like, I hate blue cheese. You'll never see me eat it, so on and so forth. And I said, Jessica, look, I would challenge you. I'll be back in a month. Her. Oh no, I said her first name. Oh my God.
How many Jessicas are in America? Yeah, okay. Let's continue.
I don't know. She actually had a brother named Jeremiah. No, she didn't, but I thought that'd be funny. I challenged her. I said, I'll be back in a month. I challenge you, when you cut these cheeses in the next month, to try each of the blues. And she looked at me like I had made some insane request for her. And I said, just trust me. If I come back and you think they all taste the same, then I don't know, I'll buy your lunch or something. And she goes, okay. And so I came back the next month. And before I could even say hi to her, she goes, oh my God, Drew. And I said, what? She goes, my favorite category in this cheese shop is blue now.
Wow.
And she hated and sworn off blue cheese.
You converted another heathen.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Walmart American kind of thing. But she, and I've ran into this with a lot of people. I even had a couple of people sample blues that they were a little nervous about, but I happened to have it out on the table cutting over the holidays. And there's some that have a very earthy or cavey flavor to them. The irony flavor that you guys are used to with blue cheeses is almost non-existent in some specialty blue cheeses. So I would encourage people, and even you, Dave, to maybe try expanding out a little bit on some of those blues. You are still going to get a little bit of the irony, but there are some that have just this earthiness, or I like to say caviness to it, that just really gives it a completely different identity. And something like a Gorgonzola or a Roquefort is probably going to have more of that irony flavor that's off-putting to you. But to me, a Gorgonzola on a burger at least is fucking top notch. I still won't fuck with my steak that way, but hey, I know there's a couple people in the chat that are, that like that. Good for you guys.
I've seen that quite often. A Gorgonzola being used, crumbles, I guess, of Gorgonzola on burgers.
They have crumbles. It's generally hard, especially a Dolce. A Gorgonzola Dolce is so creamy. It would actually be better for the melting process, where something that comes off like a mountain of Gorgonzola is a bit more crumbly. Foulmouth Ken said that Shannon bought pinwheel steak last night, and he's not sure what kind of cheese was in it. But, man, it was fucking unbelievably good. I wonder if it wasn't raclette, because it's that time of year that people, snag some of it. But
so it's seasonal as well. You're telling me raclette is something that is picked up more often during this season than during the rest of the year.
Correct. It's available year round, but it really spikes this time of year, especially prior to the Christmas holiday.
Is it because it's considered something that is associated with the holidays? Is it because it's considered a luxury, and as such you're going to be wanting to share it with family or friends, or having it in a restaurant? What's the motivation for that at this time of year?
It's still a growing thing, so it's hard to 100% put my finger on, but I think it's just the idea of the holidays, having that extra time to do something a little extra special and impress your friends and family. They have these things in the November and December called raclette parties. Cheese shops will do this, and it's actually converted into some households. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's some widespread phenomenon or anything.
Just amongst cheese snobs, that's all.
Right. And that's the time of year that they bring out their irons and their heating lamps and shit, and they start melting this stuff onto, whether it be fruit, steaks, what have you. It's just, I wouldn't call it commercialized, but yeah, the cheese snobs have kind of commercialized it into it being a holiday thing, whether they meant to or not. That's what it's turned into.
Well, I can always hobnob with a snob.
Hobnob with the snob, yeah.
That's what my parties are called.
Another thing I want to mention about raclette is there are Swiss style ones and French style ones. The Swiss ones don't really have much of a rind. I think they're probably a little more friendlier when it comes to the melting process, where the French ones actually have rinds. They're washed rinds, actually, like the ones we were previously looking at. And although they do melt and carry a great flavor, the Swiss ones almost have more of that Alpine style Swissy flavor to me, where the raclette from France actually carries more of that meatiness and what I would prefer when melting personally. One other side note when it comes to the French raclettes with the washed rind, and this kind of is a little bit of a shout out back to the washed rind cheeses, is there's also one called Morbier, which is very similar. Looks like it's spelt more beer, but it's actually pronounced Morbier. If you want to call it more beer, that's fine, because I like more beer also. But proper pronunciation, Morbier, looks just like a French raclette, but it actually has this ash that runs through the middle of it long ways. And traditionally, that separated the morning milking from the evening milking, because they had some slight differences in the color and flavor, and it allowed a way to separate those two milks. So, but nowadays it really doesn't matter. They just put it there for the aesthetic or the traditional look of it. But now it's not separating specifically any types of milk. But just a little fun fact on that. But Morbier is going to taste very similar to a French raclette.
All right. So shall we move on to our next topic?
Sounds like a plan. Cheese. And this is one that I've been looking forward to here. Kind of straddling the middle of the show here, but.
All right, so we just put the image up on the screen. Parmigiano Reggiano.
And a lot of people in America call it Parmesan or Parmigiano Reggiano, as the American accent would carry it. But this is not what you get in the green tub. This is not what you get in a wedge in the dairy department next to the American cheese. This here is an Italian hard cheese that carries a similar flavor to what you may have been raised on, but a much more true flavor. There's no preservatives. There's no sawdust. We all have heard the sawdust story of the last 5 years. We've actually had people come to the cheese shops in the last 5 years and point at this wheel and say, is this the one with the sawdust in it? I'm like, you guys are fucking retarded. Okay.
Get
I
out.
heard there's sawdust in this. No, you didn't hear there was sawdust in this. You heard what you wanted to hear. Now go vote for Biden and fuck off. But anyways, so it's called the King of Cheeses. Actually, the proper way of cutting wedges off of this makes it look like little triangles. And when lined across the top of a wheel of this, it takes the form of a crown to further signify the King of Cheese. This is one of the oldest cheeses in the world. I don't think I have to tell anyone what to use this on, but sprinkled on pizza, into Italian dishes, works as a great topper to finish off various dishes. Now this is actually an old wives' tale. Did you know that the Parmigiano Reggiano actually helped the Roman Empire conquer?
That is the.
This was actually
that
their
is
biggest
the legend. Yeah, I've heard that story before. Please let us know.
One of their biggest weapons. Because their enemies were out eating plants, leaves, whatever they could kill to survive out in the fields, while they would strap these Parmigiano Reggiano wheels onto the backs of their horses and go off into battle, and they could sit there for months living off of this wheel of cheese, because it only takes a few ounces to get your nourishment. And again, like you were talking about MREs the other day, Dave, it's not the most healthy way of living, but this was the ancient MRE,
basically, for lack of
terms. And you could have as little as 4 ounces and get what you needed to survive the day. And when we're talking about an 80-pound wheel of cheese, that's almost a year's worth of cheese per wheel. So, they say that this cheese actually helped to conquer the Roman Empire to conquer. As far as the cutting of this cheese, this is, again, not something you would just set on a board and run a wire through. You actually have tools that you have to go through. There's spades. There's this giant but actually you run a spade through it. It's a spade. There's two different spades. There's one that actually has a little hook on it, and you drag that through the cheese on all four sides. And then you take the two actual spades and run it through deeper and pull apart left hand and right hand, pulling opposite directions to separate the cheese. And when it finally pops, now this is a smell you want going through your grocery store, because it emanates through the whole store. generally, if you don't already have a crowd watching you from just going through the effort of cracking this thing, once you popped it open, people come flocking to the deli area looking for where that smell is coming from, and they find that it's Parmigiano Reggiano. And any good cheese stewards will actually take pieces off and hand it out to their customers and tell them you need to buy this shit here from now on. But another thing that I wanted to mention, we alluded to earlier, is how this cheese is actually it's been the focal point of Italian mafias, European mafias in general, where and just theft in general too.
It's in such demand. It's considered such a luxury that it is insatiable for organized crime to not attempt to grasp that opportunity. Just like with maple syrup up here.
Well, and it also they actually use this for down payments in for houses.
Well, I guess that really goes to show the quality of the product and the demand that obviously is existing for it. And I put up an image on the screen right now that shows the attempt to begin the process that you just described to cut this thing apart. And yes, there are multiple specialized tools that are apparently needed to cut down this massive wheel that could probably be utilized as a substitute on any regular sedan. And yeah, it's I've seen the process as well. This was more of an impromptu thing, so I don't have a video of it. But if you ever look into the process of cutting up Parmigiano Reggiano, it's incredible because of the amount of effort that it takes to actually do it right, and it takes time, especially with something that's so just massive.
See, this is the bane of my existence because I'm such a perfectionist when it comes to things. I spend way too long doing this. And when I finally get the wheel cracked and then break it down further, it's just, it takes hours for me where it shouldn't. And you would think I'd be better at it by now, but I've gotten to the point now where I try and dodge doing it. So maybe I've been my own worst enemy there by not just allowing myself to work more with it. I can certainly crack one and cut it down to the appropriate pieces, but the speed is just not there for me. You could also, if you ever lose your wrecking ball, you could substitute it for a wheel of Parm. That's a joke, but you basically could. These things are solid as fuck. When it's set
you don't want to
out,
be in a cheese roll. I know they do this in other parts of the world, but they roll cheese wheels down a hill. If you got hit by this, it's practically a death sentence.
Yeah, it can be used for cinder block therapy too, I hear.
Well, you know what? Therapy. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but cinder blocks are cheaper, so I would never even sully a wheel of cheese with such actions.
No, but coming down a hill would have a very similar effect.
Yeah, a little truck accident, the cheese wheels start rolling down the hill and they just literally destroy an entire village because it was just too much weight. Worse than an avalanche.
Well, so what was the other thing?
Actually, so while you think of that, I want to show one graphic here, if I can find it. I'm going to put a map up on the screen of the different regions of Italy, since we're talking about Parmigiano Reggiano. And, it shows different cheeses to different regions. I hope the graphic actually shows up large enough for it to be seen properly, because it was hard to find something that had the entire country of Italy, but also had all the different regions sort of identifying what cheese is the most popular one or what they're known for. And I just hope that this is going to be visible. If not, then I'm going to have to zoom in. I think most people can see this. If I make this big screen, I can see it on my computer, but sorry people, if you're on your phone, I don't know if you can, so please let me know, because maybe we'll just take the northern region first, look at the middle region then, and then the southern region. But Drew, do you see the graphic? Can you make it out?
Yeah, it's coming in clear for me. Yeah, on phones they might be a little task to read it, but looks good.
So we can see that Parmigiano Reggiano, which is the cheese we're currently talking about, comes from the Emilia Romagna region of France, which is more in the upper region or northern region, I should say. My family, well, I've got family that's from Lombardy, for example, Valle d'Aosta and Castelmango, or Magno. Sorry, I was reading the cheese names. Valle d'Aosta and Piemonte. Sorry, I'm not fluent in Italian, although I can, do a little bit. But yeah, northern regions and stuff. And yeah, we got Parmigiano Reggiano in the northern regions. But I don't know. Now that we have this graphic up here, Drew, do you want to comment on anything, either from your knowledge of the cheeses or perhaps just your knowledge of history? I don't know, the different climates that are created that provide the different creations of cheeses and such. Because obviously, look at this. This image is very varied. Each cheese is quite different from the other. Obviously, some consistencies. For example, Grana Padano is a little bit similar to Reggiano, at least somewhat consistency, but Asiago is different. It's a creamy, delicious, actually substantially more buttery than, say, Parmigiano Reggiano, but I mean, it's just so varied. Or look at Gorgonzola. I mean, it's only one it's actually right next to Veneto region of Italy. And in Lombardia, they make Gorgonzola and mascarpone. So those are really different from each other. What do you like? Tell us, inform us, Drew. What's your knowledge about this? Like, because this is amazing to me. I love the fact that all these different regions have their own unique style of cheese that they've become so known for, that the European Union and all these little, not little, but these organizations to protect, cultural establishments, is that, if you're going to make a cheese, you cannot make a cheese unless it adheres to our standards, and it has to fit these molds. And if not, you cannot call it this cheese.
Yeah, for sure. Emilia Romagna, you see Parmigiano Reggiano and Grana Padano. I wanted to point that out. It's funny that you honed in on this too, and the similarities of how, you could almost substitute Grana Padano if you can't get a hold of Parmigiano Reggiano, and they do come from the same area. I feel like that the Grana Padano is more than likely heavily inspired. I think that'd probably be pretty safe to say. But when you look up at Lombardia with the Gorgonzola and mascarpone, just because a certain region does one cheese, and you notice they're both soft cheeses, youthful cheeses.
I like how you said that, youthful cheeses.
But they carry, they carry similar influences still. That just to the what are they called in Italy? Are they states or regions? I guess.
They're states. It depends on who you ask, but yeah, I believe that officially they are the states of Italy.
States, or I've heard regions too. I just didn't
Regardless, it's the same. It's the same thing.
The fact that they're just a hop, step, and a jump away from each other, and you've got these hard aged ancient cheeses versus, and I guess the
more contemporary,
been around a long time too, but are more contemporary cheeses. Yeah. Then you got Fontina in the northwest corner. Something I wanted to point out, and something I noticed here, is you could almost open a cheese shop with the different varieties of cheeses, but do you notice two things that are missing that are very significant? Out of styles of cheese, I should say.
Of the ones that we're seeing, or what we're not seeing?
What we're not seeing.
Provolone. And there's another one. Okay, fill me in. I would say provolone. Or provolone. Well, which one?
And there's going to be similars to provolone here, but you don't see any cheddars or any Goudas.
Yeah, but actually, the Gouda I am surprised about, but cheddar isn't really known in Italy, is it? I mean, have they adopted that?
No, but if you go if you look at America, everything's replicated, duplicated, or remade. And you could go to pretty much any country of significance in the cheese world, at least, and see efforts to replicate other things. But in Italy, and this is something I'm discovering now, so it's open to conversation. I haven't researched this or anything, but there seems to be little to no cheddar influence, despite it being one of the world's most popular cheeses. Italy hasn't even touched it.
Well, I
Just from
actually
this
see that.
image.
They're traditionalists. They stick with what they're famous for, what they're known for, and what they're capable of doing. And cheddar, I don't actually see where, like, I see where you're coming from, but I don't agree with it, because even France, for example, I don't see any major cheddar influence there either. And
Sure.
I think it's because of the fact that they're very nationalistic when it comes to these sorts of things, and the EU backs it up when they're willing to sue companies or enact these laws that you'll get, fined for even using the same words together. So nationalistic, very protective of their culture. And I think that, America wants to adopt all these different things, like, oh, look at this, look at that, blah, blah, blah. But these countries are perfectly satisfied with doing what they've done for literally thousands of years. And if somebody wants cheddar in the European Union, they can easily order it, and it's delivered, via bullet train from Britain, or overnight or something, whatever.
Right.
So this stuff is available, and I see a big difference from Europe to America is that there's no need to compete, at least to attempting to adopt a foreign type of product and then try to make it their own and then sell it off as if it's better. I don't see that happening either in France or in Italy, which are two places that are known for their cheeses.
You make a good point there, because there probably are, companies or farms or whatever that make cheddars within Italy, but they're not going to push it or promote it because it's just not their
And
thing.
more so, the image here actually just shows which regions are
Or the
most
most
which cheeses are most famous for those regions, or the ones that initially were created there. So obviously cheddar was created in England, so we're not going to see it on this map.
Right.
But
Yeah,
I just wanted to
this
see
isn't
what
an
you thought
exclusive
about the variation of cheeses, and again how you could be literally a skip and a jump away from another region, and yet their cheeses, or at least what they originated or are known for, are totally different from the next door neighbor.
One we didn't talk about, I'm seeing on this list, is burrata.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Burrata, it's a ball of mozzarella basically, but in the middle is a cream. It's almost like cottage cheese.
It is there. It is
so
there.
when you cut into it just oozes out.
Look at the east coast of Italy,
Yeah.
in the Puglia region.
Yeah, I see it. I was saying that we hadn't talked about it yet.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said you didn't see it. Okay. My bad.
No, we've gone 2 hours and we talked about mozzarella a couple times, but never mentioned burrata.
This
So I just wanted to
honestly
give a
does
quick
not
nod
feel
to that.
like we've been talking 2 hours on cheese, and it certainly does not feel like 2 hours on cheese. I'm fucking having a ball.
And we could go further. I mean, just looking at our list, depending on how much we try and shorten it up and everything, I mean, we've still got several things to talk about. We could go even deeper. So, but yeah, how did we get here? Was this? Oh, we were off
It's
of
because we were talking
Parmigiano
Parmigiano Reggiano, and I wanted to at least get your opinion about the different regions of Italy, how the cheeses themselves vary, and again, how you can find such a difference between two regions and two cheeses that are totally different. I mean, I love Asiago, for example. Well, I don't know if I love Asiago. There's a poignant smell and flavor to it. In limited quantities, I can deal with it, but I just recognize that its flavoring, its odor, its aroma. That's the appropriate term, people. Odor is for something that stinks. Cheese doesn't stink unless it's blue cheese. But the aroma, so different from Parmigiano Reggiano, which is what you said just a moment ago, which is you cut that thing open in a store and people start to flock to it.
Yeah, and they'll also fly. You'll get the manager coming across the store if it's a Gruyere that you're opening or something. But that's something I think I put that on the list. Oh, I did put it on the list. Okay, so we'll get to it in due time. But
all right, so
certain smells will bring in different crowds, whether it be a crowd that that wants to smell the cheese, or if it's your store manager going, "What the fuck did you just do?" But we'll get there.
Smoky Fontino all the way, baby. All right, so we're going to move on to the next one now. If I can pronounce this correctly, Misithra?
Correct.
All right. And
So
where's this originate from, first and foremost? The name
Greece.
is a little... Greece, okay.
So yeah, Greece, Greek cheese. It's again one of the oldest cheeses in the world. It to me, I almost the way I describe it to people, again going into layman's terms with people to keep it very simple, is it's a sheep's milk parmesan, really, and it's which you'd go, well, that's Pecorino Romano. Well, Mizithra is much different, where Pecorino is a little saltier and would be a little more palatable to just eat. Mizithra is not recommended to eat by itself. Although I'm one of those weirdos that does like that flavor on its own. It's almost like powder. I actually know a cheese steward years ago that had someone who was coming in every day and grabbing all of their samples and eating them throughout the store. And so she put Mizithra out as the samples that day and waited specifically to see this person come in the front door, set them out. And that person, of course, swiped all of them and started walking through the store. It was the last day they swiped cheeses from that store. I'll put it that way. Because they realized that they'd been had and been caught. But it comes in the form, it almost looks like a softball when you see it in its full form. Then you cut it off into either half moons or quarter moon pieces off of the
You just described the
circle.
image I have displayed.
Yeah, there you go. There it is. You got the half and the quarter.
Does your computer have an extra port for a monitor?
Probably. I just never explored that.
All right, maybe we're gonna have to.
I've gotten so used to.
have a
I've gotten
donation
so used to.
for that.
I've gotten so used to single monitor that I've never even explored that. But anyways, so this I like to sprinkle on my pizza rather. It also is well known, and what it's most used for, at least here in the States, is a recipe called brown butter pasta. And I'm surprised more people don't know about this. And if it's spread around, I think you would see Mizithra sales go through the roof, because it's a very simple recipe. You think of the stay-at-home mother that has 3 kids. She's going through the grocery store trying to plan this, that, and the next thing. And they want to make things easy. With Mizithra brown butter pasta, it's whatever pasta you choose, butter, and this cheese. 15 minutes of prep time and cooking, and you're done. And you've served dinner. And it's phenomenal. There's recipes out there for it where you can alter it a little bit or add, some herbs and spices and shit, but keeping it just simple. But again, you can't eat it's not recommended to eat just a piece of this by itself. It's meant as an addition, where, like I said, cheeses like Pecorino Romano or Parmigiano Reggiano, you could sit there and actually munch on those. Mizithra is much more powdery and dull in flavor by itself.
Okay. What I do want to ask you right now is a question that was parlayed. If you give me a second here, I'm just trying to save the image of this so that I can show it. But it was the Goon who asks, ask Drew about halloumi cheese. And Connor Tostovan says halloumi is great grilled. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show an image right now of the halloumi cheese, and then I'm going to show an image of it grilled as well. So why don't you go ahead and take care of that, Drew, and while I get the image up.
Well, this is another Greek cheese.
I'm ignorant of
Cyprus
this. This is totally new to me. I may have seen it in the stores, but I've never learned about it.
I can't believe I left it off my notes, to be honest. Country of origin is Cyprus on this one.
No,
but
because the fact is, we were planning a 24-hour stream. If we were, both of us would have made a list. I would have suggested cheese curds to Drew to discuss how you get the whole story of curds and whey. I guess I've watched documentaries about how cheese was made in the Middle Ages, which is the whole story of Little Miss Muffet came from. And eating the curds and whey, and the separation of the curds and the whey, and how that's used to make cheese and other products and stuff. So I'm fascinated by that sort of thing. But we should have the actual, just a regular slice, or a regular block of this halloumi stuff. And I'm going to show an image of it grilled now. So let us know. Sorry, I interrupted, but let us know again. Where did it start from? What it is? What it tastes like, and how it's used.
So yeah, I mean, halloumi, you've already kind of revealed that it's a cooking cheese, a grilling cheese, where it has a high melting point, higher than typical melting point. So you can actually throw it onto your grill or your stove top and heat it up, be it through, grilling, obviously. And it can be used in salads, served with vegetables. It is very oily and greasy, so you take that into consideration. But it's, as I mentioned, it's Greek. I'm trying to think of what else to say about it. Here in America, we have what's called bread cheese, which is very similar. A lot of people who want the Americanized version, you go to bread cheese, because there's been issues with availability of halloumi here in the States over the years, and bread cheese is what we've directed a lot of people to. And although not 100% the same, it's a very similar concept and can satisfy people in trying times where we can't get a hold of it. It is popular in the Middle East. So
is it Greek?
It's Greek, but yeah, a Middle Eastern culture has actually adopted this throughout, like the Eastern Mediterranean and Turkey. It's kind of broadened out from its country of origin and actually became very popular. And kind of like David Hasselhoff on the pop charts, he couldn't hit it here in America, but he went to Europe and started producing hits. But yeah, I've only worked with this cheese a couple times as far as personally bringing it home and doing different things with it. So I'm not extremely knowledgeable on it, other than to know kind of some of the history of it. It's been around for about 1,500 years.
Damn.
There's recipes that can be found as far back as 600-700 years ago. But it got more popular, I guess, in the last 300 to 400 years. Started spreading around a lot more, and by the 20th century, that's where it really started getting to where it is today, I guess, in popularity. But as far as working with it and that, as I said, you can grill with it. You can put it on vegetable and fruit platters to complement those items. You can have it alone too, but like I said, it's pretty oily, so it helps to have something to offset it.
All right.
Squeaky texture, says Connor. Yeah.
Just wanted to let people know, I wish I had the link to provide you at this point, but I will as soon as this message is received. But Falmouth Ken will be going live as soon as this episode completes. So there will be no transition, no handoff. There will be literally, as soon as I cut it, he's going live. So, awesome. Anytime that Ken goes live, people are clamoring for it. So now that we're building up your appetite, you're going to have a full meal. Obviously cheeses are great for appetizers. That's what we're doing right now. And your full course will be provided by Ken shortly. But we still have quite a few. Well, not quite a few, but we have a few to get through.
Yeah, and I think we'll spend less time on the topics.
Not even, because the way I calculated it is that we've only got basically mostly 3 or 4 of your list to go. And yeah, we can summarize with a few other ones and discuss a few other things. But I expect this to be fully, I guess, completed by 4 p.m.
I was thinking that too, top of the hour.
Yeah, exactly. And as such, that's the perfect transition to have, us go off to watch Falmouth Ken. So as soon as he provides that link to me, I'll put that in the chat. But Drew, let's talk about the next topic here. Or the next cheese, I should say. It's all the same topic. It's all cheese.
Well,
what?
The next cheese here is one that is the source of many of my frustrations over the final week before Christmas for a multitude of reasons. One, it's insanely popular. because it's used in a lot of cooking, but with the uneducated public. And I know people are like, "Oh, you're a snob," blah blah. But just imagine being an expert, like, maybe it's a video game that you guys are listening that you're just an expert on, and you got the term noob, right? Someone comes in and, oh my God, another fucking noob. I can't believe it. That this is basically the comparison to that, and all the noobs come out the week of Christmas. And I couldn't tell you how many texts I sent to Dave the week before Christmas, like, I'm going to scream, I'm going to kill somebody, and I felt like you're the only one that could really truly relate to that frustration.
I definitely did.
I know there's others I could have hit up, but we were already kind of talking about my holiday week and everything. So you were I just kept coming to you like, I'm going to kill someone. Someone is going to die. But anyways, right here, for all to hear, you pronounce this Gruyere. Gruyere. It's not gay ear. It's not gay rear. We're not fucking each other here. It's a cheese. Gruyere.
You mean it's not Gruyere? Happy Gruyere.
I had a cheese steward years ago. Actually ended up becoming a good friend of mine because him and I had a lot of similarities. He had a picture of Stone Cold Steve Austin in his cheese shop. And the first time I met this guy and saw that, I'm like, yep, we're going to be friends. And so, he's got that. He's in a heavy metal band at night, or a metal band, a heavy metal. I got heavy. Yeah. So anyways, he basically was a cheese steward by day, metal musician by night, loves professional wrestling. So, I mean, him and I were obviously friends from the get-go, but he would make a list of every time a cheese was mispronounced. He had a little notebook there. And every time I'd come in, he'd flip it open and show me the new ones. He was up to 3 full notebook pages, 2 columns long, of mispronunciations of cheese. And this one was the one that, had he put it all into its own section, it would have filled up a whole page. And yeah, he had gay rear, gay ear. And I'm like, oh my God, the shit people were saying, like, would have gotten them canceled had anyone else heard it, Munster was pronounced monster. I've heard that a lot of times. No, it's not the monster cheese. You want a monster, keep mispronouncing
Monster
shit.
Energy cheese?
Monster.
Do they sponsor like
the
those
monster
extreme...
is down in the sport drink aisle there.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'm getting off on a little bit of a diatribe here of mispronunciations, but it is very, so there you go. You guys got me on this. It's aggravating. But this is a hard Swiss cheese. Got a little bit of a yellow tinge to it. When people ask for Swiss over the holidays, my first thing is to want to bitch slap them, because Swiss cheese is not an actual item. Now, Americanized, yeah, there's Swiss cheese in your dairy department. It's got the holes in it. They may even have it shredded. But Swiss is not a cheese. Swiss is Switzerland. You're not eating a country, okay? You're eating a cheese. This is Gruyere. There's also Grand Cru. There's also Comté. They're all Alpine cheeses is really what you should be calling them. Swiss, you're not eating the Swiss, okay? You guys aren't carnivore, not carnivores. Jesus Christ, where you eat other
cannibals,
humans.
Cannibals.
Cannibals.
Cannibals. Yes, and
you're not fucking cannibals.
I'm glad that you bring this up
Swiss
because
people.
Emmentaler is the cheese that
There's
you're referring to right now, which is an image that I'm going to put up. So keep talking and keep embarrassing these individuals, because yes, you don't eat Swiss. Okay, that's cannibalism, except out of Germany, I believe, is illegal. So and yeah, look it up, people. If you want to be scared, look up the cannibal laws in Germany, I should say. If you speak German, do it in German. But this is called Emmentaler. I'm sure Drew pronounces it better than I do, and it's always been an annoyance of mine as well to actually listen to people to refer to this cheese in such an insulting manner. Because why not just call it the proper name instead of being a Walmart American and just say, oh, it's from Switzerland, so it's just Swiss cheese. So yeah, that all those different cheeses from Italy, they're from Italy, so it's just Italian cheese, right? Just Italian cheese.
Yeah.
So here I'm going to transition to the picture. You'll see that in however many minutes it decides to show. And this is the cheese that many people again refer to Swiss, and its distinctive sort of feature is the bubbles or holes, as they're sometimes referred to in the cheese. Please explain, Drew.
Well, so the Emmentaler that you guys are seeing, and that's how I pronounce it. It's probably more of an Americanized way of pronouncing it. But when you're talking to a bunch of people, a bunch of Americans, Gouda's not Howda. You got to speak to them with what they can understand and pick your battles. But Emmentaler is it's actually, even though it is what people think of as Swiss, it's got a much more profound flavor to it, almost similar in comparison to the way American Parmesan versus Parmigiano Reggiano is. A much more much better flavor. And again, because the Swisses that we eat as Americans out of the dairy aisle is jam-packed with preservatives. Again, you're getting a much stronger, much more defined taste out of Emmentaler. Even though it is the flavor you're expecting, it's going to be a lot stronger because it's not packed with bullshit. So you only need about half as much as this as you would think you would for making, say, a ham and Swiss or ham and Emmentaler cheese. But so Dave made a great point there, and that was the next one I was going to jump on when talking about Swiss cheeses. They're Alpine cheeses. And the Gruyere that you had up a minute ago, no holes in it. It doesn't need to have holes to be Swiss because there is no Swiss cheese. It's Alpine style. It's
and this is not snobbish, people. This is just basic common courtesy.
Like even on Wikipedia, I pulled up the Wikipedia article just to see how layman it was. And quote, Gruyere is classified as a Swiss type or Alpine cheese. So even Wikipedia has it right. That Swiss type would probably be the best way to put it.
Yep.
It's what the retards think of as cheese with holes in it, basically. I don't know how else to put it. And I need to get off of this because it's
I know it's aggravating. Yes, it's when I worked in IT, for example, when people would
move.
Well, apart from that, when they'd point to their computer tower as a desktop, they'd say, "Yeah, the CPU." It's like, no, the CPU is a particular component within the computer. What you're talking about is the computer case that contains all the necessary components to make your computer work. They point to the computer screen and they'd say, yeah, that's the computer. It's like, no, that's the monitor. That's different. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And these are basic things. It's like, somebody goes to... I don't even sure the right analogy here. I know I'm getting to the same frustration because I'm now having flashbacks of working in IT. So let's move on, I guess. Let's move on to the next cheese, which I believe will be one of our final cheeses here. This is a cheese that I don't believe I'm familiar with. Manchego. Right?
Really? Yeah. I'm surprised you're not familiar with this one. One final...
Go ahead.
While you transition, I did want to make one final note on Gruyere. Gruyere, Emmentaler, these Alpine-style cheeses are great for fondues. They're the go-tos for most fondue recipes. I guess fondue could be something we could talk about, but really, I mean, I think most people know what fondue is. It's a dipping cheese that's, where the temperature's raised to make it where you could dip items in it, be it fruits or vegetables. Some recipes even have gorgonzola in it because you're going back to the gorgonzola and how...
Those are the two favorite, Gruyere and gorgonzola, apparently, I think. I'm not sure about gorgonzola, but Gruyere is definitely the most popular one. I know that they've done gorgonzola, but there's another one that's quite... I guess consistent, or at least
Emmentaler, Fontina.
There we go. Okay, yep.
Either one of those. It's basically Gruyere, Emmentaler are the two ingredients, but Fontina is a pretty popular one as well.
But we're going to have to cover fondue because that's a specialized thing. I want to cover that. Yeah. We're going to have to... I'm sorry, Drew, but we're going to have to do another episode because this is clearly, we could have done a 24-hour cheese stream. I guarantee you that. If we had the time available, guaranteed. Right. Because I've got the questions and Drew has the answers. And I would love to cover just fondue in general because it's not something, it was, I guess, popular in the 70s here in North America, but it's been something that's been done in Europe for ages. And it's a popular thing. It's a great way to enjoy these cheeses. But I love the ability of, when it comes to fondue to utilize all these different types of ingredients. Like you can use either, fruits, you can use vegetables, you can use meats. Then there's, obviously it's not related exactly, but chocolate fondue and stuff. But it's such a great meal. Yeah, I guess a meal, but it's so unique to cold climates and stuff, but yet it works so well when it comes to keeping you warm, keeping you fed, and just sorry, I'm actually salivating here, but just enticing your palate.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I think you summed it up there. I don't even know what to add to that.
Yeah, we'll have to cover it in Cheese.
But yeah, we'll definitely have to cover. Yeah, exactly. We'll have to do another one because to try and there's no way to shortcut cheese.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you do, it'll be
And this was a good sort of introduction. It was very heavy and stuff. A lot of great information. But I mean, I've got to go into the cheese curds and stuff. I want to talk about other cheeses that are known in other parts of the world. And yeah, this is just really just putting our toe into the water sort of thing. So, I appreciate that Drew is here to explain this to us. But yeah, we're going to have to do another show. But Manchego, please explain to us more about this cheese.
Manchego. So this is one that's covered under the PDO, the protected designation of origin that we talked about earlier in the European Union. This is from Spain. It actually uses sheep milk. And the general flavor of it, to me, actually, and again, I mean, it's sheep, so it's hard to get away too much from that flavor, but it kind of has a similar flavor to Pecorino Romano, or even, well, I wouldn't say Mizithra because again, Mizithra is very bland, but again, carrying those sheep notes and flavors to it. It could be a very youthful cheese or a very well-aged cheese, anywhere from 60 days to 2 years. And in even some regions of Spain, you can find it in the form of a 2-week aging where it's very, very soft. But again, it's pretty much limited to Spain. You're not going to get that anywhere else. As far as the requirements for the Manchego to be a PDO, it must be produced either in there's only 4 or 5 regions in Spain. It has to be whole milk sheep that were raised in Manchega, or at the breed rather of being Manchega, the regions we talked about a minute ago. But it has to be aged at least 60 days and no more than 2 years. And it actually has certain size requirements as well, with a maximum height of 12 centimeters or just shy of 5 inches, and the diameter 22 centimeters or just shy of 9 inches. It can be made from raw pasteurized milk. It's definitely an artisan cheese. Let me see the picture you've got there, so you can see the marks through it, almost like the straight lines through it. I'm not talking about the black markings, but you see where it's like been like almost like it was aged in a basket in the picture there. That is, from my understanding in the aging process, and again, this comes to my ignorance of how each cheese is physically produced on a day-to-day basis, but traditionally it was actually aged in weaved baskets that gave the rind this definition and these lines through it. Now I believe it's more artificially produced to retain the image of the traditional look. But as far as beyond that, the flavors, the way it's made, the regions, the style of sheep that are used is all protected under the PDO. But like I said, the flavor is similar to Pecorino Romano. I think it's going to be a lighter flavor, though, for most people, especially if you get a more youthful one. The more aged, of course, like we spoke earlier on cheddars, the more it ages, the more defined and condensed that flavor becomes.
That's amazing. Now, I put up a new graphic on the screen, and this is obviously going to be something that we're going to have to talk about on a subsequent episode. But I've got the cheeses of Spain. And it says areas with appellation of origin status. So We do have the Manchego region there. If you look at the screen, audience and Drew, it is the largest, well, second largest region that you can see there. It's in a darker orange color, closer to the Mediterranean. So on the eastern side of Spain, you can see a wheel of Manchego sort of cut pointing towards that region. And this is the region that Drew is referring to us to. But as you can see, even Spain has a varied type of variations on cheeses, but just like Italy, where it was each region is known for their own stuff, and it's so distinct from the next place over.
Well, and I'll tell you, many of these cheeses I'm not familiar with, which appear to me to be more, maybe they're left more regionalized there and aren't exported out.
Exactly.
Mahon, which actually comes off an island east of Spain. Yeah, there it is. That's one I've experienced before. It's not as easy to find as, say, Manchego. Obviously, that's going to be the most popular one coming out of Spain. But Mahon has, it's been a long time since I had that, but it's going to be a little softer, a little more youthful than some of the other cheeses. But other than that, the Idizabal, I believe that's how you pronounce it, in the top right there. But beyond that, most of these cheeses I've never gotten to experience.
Well, there's your homework. No, but you're right. Some cheeses are regional, and although they might be known, you work in this industry, you recognize that there are people that gauge the interest of consumers to see whether or not is this even worth selling here in America? Are the costs of importing this here going to be able to allow us to stay in the black by selling this, or is this going to be a lost product? So I can understand, Dave, totally.
There's a part of it that's that, but even more than that, can the cheesemaker produce enough cheese for all of the U.S.? That's a
good point.
Because a lot of these cheesemakers, when you see a certain type of cheese, now Manchego, obviously there's going to be multiple companies for that. But that aside, you look at these other cheeses, there may only be one or two farms that actually make this cheese in the entire world. Mizithra is one of those. There's only 2 or 3 farms that make Mizithra under the protected status. And they've got to be capable of producing enough cheese to supply thousands of grocery stores in the United States. And speaking of some of the bigger grocery chains out there, they won't take on your cheese unless you can supply the entire company, and they'll drop you if you don't. So you could get hung with a bunch of cheese too.
Now, does this also create inflated prices? Because if they can't keep up with, again, supplying to the American public is quite an ample task. Especially with how many billions of tons of cheese that are sold every year, like you said, Drew. I mean, you were just talking about cheddar, but I mean, if a rare product, a product that can't be produced in large quantities, does get sold in a market with high demand, that price just shoots up dramatically. So, are you going to be paying $1,000 a pound of cheese because it's so rare? No, a store's not even going to invest in that sort of thing because it doesn't help the bottom line. It's just not profitable.
Right. So what they do is supply and demand obviously plays some form of degree of influence in the cheese shops and grocery stores. But there's a level of, if you can't keep up, you get dropped. There's plenty more cheesemakers out there that would love an opportunity to be in a certain grocery chain or just be exported out to the U.S. And they'll take the challenge. But I've seen companies get dropped because they couldn't keep up. They don't raise the price. These stores already know that they're struggling to sell it at the price they have it. So they're not going to increase the price any more than they have to. They're going to put that strain on the cheesemaker to keep up or get left behind. And I can't say, I've never talked to anyone in the grocery industry or the cheese industry that said that verbatim, but just from my experience over the years, it's very obvious because even with the issues we've had with the ports, the importing, the exporting, everything that's COVID related, even though we went fucking 15 months of COVID without any fucking issues until, people changed, let's say. Yeah. But anyways, we still have not seen a vast increase in prices. There's been a little bit here, a little bit there, but that could be attributed to inflation. I have not seen any extreme changes in prices because, from my perspective, these grocery chains and cheesemakers have played the game of, if you don't keep up, we're moving on to the next one. They can get us that price.
Well, we've seen at least an increase of 50% in dairy products here. So,
well, in dairy across the board, yeah.
A formerly $5 brick of cheddar now is close to 10.
Yeah, but with specialty cheese and the prices that they carry, I'm surprised that, for instance, like crab legs, I'm surprised they're still even available in grocery stores because of the insane price they've jumped up to. But it's going to get to a point where grocery will stop bringing them in.
Yep.
There's supply, there's demand, but there's also the ability of, or the expectation of the customer to actually buy the product too that they've got to worry about. So there's actually three factors: supply, demand, and customer.
Exactly. If it's priced beyond their abilities, they're no longer going to price. They're not going to buy it, and there's going to be an excess of cheese that can't be sold.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let's move on to goat Gouda.
Goat Gouda. Now this, again, like we did cheddar earlier, was just what I wanted to show when we talk about Gouda, because you could talk about. There's so many things you can bring up with Gouda. There's aged Goudas, there's red wax Goudas, there's Edam, there's smoked Gouda, which we can go back into smoked on that, which one of my more favorite smoked cheeses is a smoked Gouda. But
those are good. Those are so good. Smoked Goudas are amazing, people. But I prefer, but I prefer milk, like cow milk Gouda, as opposed to goat milk Gouda. But regardless,
in the U.S., it's pronounced Gouda, and to the Dutch, it's Gouda.
Really?
So it is.
Gouda.
So everyone's mispronouncing it, other than in the Netherlands where they get it right.
Whoever thought that Dave Rose would be schooled on linguistics by Drew? I love it.
Now that's how I was taught to say it. Maybe I should go look it up and make sure, but everything I've heard and pronounced from people who've told me to pronounce it, it's Gouda. Like how to do it, Gouda.
Well, you taught me how to pronounce yay toast, so.
Yay toast, yay toast. But yeah, you could get as youthful as 4 weeks on these to, many, many years. I've seen with cheddar, I see 10 to 15 year cheddars here and there. I don't see it so much with Goudas. It might have to do with the popularity, but usually Gouda, you don't see much more than 3 years of age. There's a handful of them that go 5. I don't know what I could say about Gouda that most people don't already know, and that maybe that's me.
It's sure Gouda.
But it could be me assuming. But my favorite is in the 2-year range on Goudas. It's got the tyrosine crystallization in it seems to happen a lot quicker in Goudas than when we were speaking in cheddars.
I like its consistency.
Yeah, and are you speaking more of the aged or the younger Goudas?
More of the aged stuff. Well, even the youthful stuff, it's still got a sort of like a malleable, creamy, but it's still solid. Yeah. Obviously, the older it gets, the harder sort of it gets. But Gouda itself, of any age, just has a nice consistency to it. I do prefer the younger ones, the youthful ones, as you refer to them, much more because it's a little more creamy, and it's not so brittle, if you want to use that term. But regardless, I mean, aged or youthful, Gouda is a very good cheese.
There's a cheese called Edam that I just want to touch on really quick. EDAM. Similar in some aspects to red wax Gouda because it does get wrapped in red wax, but a different flavor. You get someone that comes up and asks for Edam cheese, which isn't widely available here in the U.S., again, coming from the Netherlands. But
I've seen that substantially up here.
I see it in small... I don't see it a whole lot. I'll be completely honest with you. There's only a handful of grocery chains I've actually seen take on this item for whatever reason. The closest thing, though, most stores that I work with, it's like, well, there's the red wax Gouda, and every time the person goes, nah, bleh, and takes off like a fucking asshole.
And then you say, let me guess, you shop at Walmart.
Yeah. But
I'm going to put up
they are
some
right.
Edam right now on the screen. It is the classic red wax, cut up into nice little little sort of cubes. Graphics not the best, but it should be coming up in a moment.
I will say that they are more educated than you're actually realizing. I hate the reaction because it's like, don't be a fucking dick, okay? I'm trying to get you the closest thing we have. But there's a lot with Edam or Edam, however you choose to pronounce it.
You're American. You
one.
can dictate to the world. You can pronounce it
Right.
any way you want to. You've got the nukes.
It could be a very Walmart-ish pronunciation, but it actually, where red wax Gouda does spoil over time, it does go bad. Edam or Edam actually hardens over time and does not go bad. It actually, in a way, it's not aging.
It
but
preserves itself.
As it self-preserves with the wax, where red wax Gouda is not that way. And you can actually get different characteristics out of the cheese as if it was aging by letting it get harder. Although it may be less desirable, it's still edible. So that's something to keep in mind with this one. Now, the one you're showing there, I wonder if that's not made more in the style of a red wax Gouda, because
I love it how Drew's like, yeah, that random image you picked up that you definitely did write the word into Google, but that doesn't look like the actual cheese that I know is the cheese. So I do appreciate
it's not your fault.
No, I appreciate this because you're making me work hard. And okay, let me try this one. So hold on. Does Edam is Edam considered a Swiss style cheese?
I wouldn't consider it
that. Okay, because I'm looking at a picture right now with Edam cheese with holes in it. That doesn't sound appropriate.
Anything could develop any cheese could develop holes in it. Any aged cheese, I should say. So I don't think that. And again, that's where the holes are misleading people to think that it's Swiss. It's not. But you could actually end up with holes and divots in an aged cheddar from England.
Really? I didn't know that. See, this is confusing for me now because I'm looking for Edam cheese and I can't find what you're describing. And I can find the packages that are closed, but
like I said, it's hard to tell. But you do have these Americanized companies that try and put out something that's going to be satisfying to a market, and then they find out it's nothing but a ball of red wax Gouda with a name slapped on it. So I could be wrong. I was actually probably talking instead of thinking what I said, to be honest.
I don't know. I mean, quite a lot as it is, so I'm gonna have to, go with you. And when when your eagle eye notices that something isn't, right, it seems to be correct because you were able to prove that when we discussed the Gruyere. So let's look at this image here. I want you to tell me whether or not this looks a little closer to what it should be. But here's this image. This is what's been classified as, according to Google Images, as Edam cheese. And this is cut up. It's a wheel that's been cut up. Perhaps the consistency in the rind might be closer to what it should be. It's not red wax. Sorry, I didn't realize that. But maybe the consistency is what is closer to. Because I'm confused now. Because I'm looking at all these images. I'm looking at one right now that has red wax on the outside, but it looks like cheddar. So,
wow! If this is an Edam, this is like some special batch shit right here. Yeah. So maybe the original was. It could have been the blurry nature of the picture too. And I don't know. I wouldn't hang too much on my words on Edam cheese. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
Because I haven't worked with it a whole lot, but something seemed a little off about that picture. It looked more of it didn't look like something traditional. It didn't look like one that would be shipped from the Netherlands, but I could be wrong. But going back to Gouda, because we did kind of branch off of that, in my list I had goat Gouda, and the reason I put that there is because I find this really fascinating. When people come to the cheese shop looking for goat cheese, 99 out of 100 times they're looking for the logs of goat cheese, right?
You want me to put that image up right now?
If you want, yeah, sure.
All right, so we just showed the Gouda wheel, and now we're the goat Gouda wheel. Now we're showing the the cheese logs, as they're referred to. And these are specifically goat cheese, and they have the flavoring, if you want to call it that. As you explained earlier, Drew, because the American palate doesn't seem to be as evolved as others, that they have to sort of put on different sorts of, I guess, accentuations, if you want to call it that, whether it be fruits, herbs and spices, or maybe some peppers, or something to liven the flavors. So I've got that image up right now. It just came in on the stream, so if you can see it there. So yeah,
I could tell you left to right exactly what those are. You got blueberry on the left, everything but the next to that. Then you got plain, and then you've got the either a pepper or a 5 pepper or something of that.
Yeah, it looks like chilies are on there too.
Yep. Generally, it's like a 3 or 5 pepper is what you typically see. But yeah, they even have everything but the bagel logs now.
Yep.
That flavor is everywhere. They got it in crackers now. It's amazing. They even have seasonings called everything but the. But anyways, so what I was saying is most times when people are asking for goat cheese, this is what they're envisioning. This is what they mean. But the reason I sent you the goat Gouda picture is that there are cheeses out there that are made. There's goat cheddars, and usually those are in the $50 to $60 a pound range. But some of the more expensive ones that you might find in a common cheese shop. But goat Goudas are more affordable. You
didn't send me any picture, dude.
I'm sorry?
You didn't send me any picture of goat Gouda. The only thing you sent me was Munster.
No, it was in the list is what I'm saying. You showed a picture of it. That's what I was meaning. My bad. So anyways, what I like about aged goat cheese, like a goat Gouda or a goat cheddar, is it gets rid of a lot of that barnyardy flavor that we were talking about earlier, that piney, lemony flavor, and just the other aspects that you should like about the cheese are left to remain, and it makes the cheese a little bit softer. But since we're showing the goat logs, I don't want to spend too much time on that, but I just wanted to mention that when you find an aged goat cheese like a Gouda or a cheddar or anything else like that, give it a go, because it's not going to taste anything like what you're seeing on your screen right now. Now, as we mentioned earlier, what you're seeing on your screen is the goat logs that I'm sure if people have tried either goat milk or goat cheese, this is what you're familiar with and the flavor that you're familiar with. And as mentioned earlier, again, the flavorings help to give people the stair step, if you will, baby steps into really truly enjoying a goat cheese. So if you by yourself like goat cheese, it would behoove you to maybe get something with some flavoring in it for some of your friends that are experimenting. This is the way to go. I would recommend honey Gouda or not honey Gouda, honey goat logs. And if you can't find a honey goat log, then get yourself a little jar of honey and drizzle it on the goat cheese as you serve it.
Yep, it's on crackers. You get a cracker, you put some slice of this log off, and you drizzle just a little bit of honey. I'm already salivating. I can't even speak without.
Something we didn't even talk about is accompaniments. Like that could be its own podcast too.
Oh no, that will be necessary for Cheese 201.
Since I mentioned honey, though, I just want to throw one small tidbit out there. I know that run-of-the-mill honey is a lot easier to drizzle, but there's nothing better, not only for flavor, but for your own body, than to go with a raw honey from your own area.
And
go ahead. If you cannot get a local honey in your area, then make sure that raw honey that you choose to buy is in the same latitude as you. So say you live in Kansas City, you can't find a local Kansas City honey, but Denver, which shares the same latitude as Kansas City, is going to have a lot more of those health aspects.
Okay.
Because it's the same reason why certain grapes only work in certain regions for making wine, is because of the latitude, the weather, if you will. Now, obviously, the weather is going to be different in Portland, Oregon than it is in Kansas City, Missouri, but you're going to at least be carrying that latitude. Again, like I said, it's the next best thing to getting very local to you. But if you can find a local raw honey within 50 to 100 miles of you, bingo.
And I will also suggest that raw honey, not suggest, but encourage you to ignore the fact that raw honey will sort of crystallize and stuff. And, oh, it looks white now. Oh, it's solid. What can I do with it? You melt it, guys. You melt it.
Yeah.
You take
Simple.
Just take a simple spoonful, a full, a tablespoon should be sufficient for, actually maybe a little bit more than a teaspoon, or a tablespoon. But again, you grab a couple of tablespoons, you melt it, you put it into a little bowl, and then you can literally drizzle it on every sort of cheese dish that you got.
And why did my honey crystallize, and why is it getting worse? It's because you put it in the fridge. Take it out of the fucking fridge.
Well,
Never
no,
put your
that
fucking
and
honey
because
in the
there's no
fucking fridge.
preservatives.
That too.
So yeah,
But-
okay. No, I don't actually keep my honey in the fridge. I keep it out. And yeah, it's organic and it gets crystallized. I melt it, and now I've got hot honey. What's better than that?
Hot honey that's spicy.
Well, it depends, but
No, I'm saying that's what I think is better than that. I like spicy honeys.
well, no,
But
you
they're
can
hard to find in raw
add to it, or the cheese itself could already have some sort of infusion of spice. So imagine putting
Sure.
a little bit of honey on a chili infused goat cheese log. Like the balancing of flavors is amazing.
There's so many things you can do that just come into the flavoring of cheese just to kind of round everything up. I prefer my cheeses as is. If I have a cracker, it's simply a vessel and it's a tasteless
Exactly.
vessel.
You don't need, again, there's no need to, add all this extra stuff to cheese. Cheese will shine on its own. A simple slice of good cheese doesn't need a thing added to it, just like what we talked about with the steak.
Mm-hmm. But if you're going to accompany your cheese with other flavorings, be it a cracker or some sort of spread or whatever on it, just remember the phrase, what grows together goes together. So if you've got an Italian cheese, then maybe you should use an Italian prosciutto. Or
Exactly.
If you've got obviously anything that comes from the same country or the same region, you can even look at it as maybe something that comes from Oregon. Like there's some great blue cheeses and cheddars that come out of Oregon. Cora mentioned Tillamook earlier. If you can find some local things in that area that have grown in that area that can accompany, whether it's a local cracker that uses a lot of local ingredients, same thing with your jams, your spreads, it's going to go well with it. Now, obviously, within reason, don't go grabbing the local broccoli to put on your cheddar. It may work, it may not, but the whole point and idea of this is like French items go with French items, go with French items, Italian items go with Italian items, so on and so forth. So what grows together goes together is what that.
And that's a great point, and I think we're going to have to utilize that as our sort of transition as we go out, because
sounds good.
Ken will be airing literally within under a minute, and I was trying to keep us going because we could do a 24-hour stream on cheese, literally. But,
Yeah.
Ken wanted to check in with me, see, when I was done and stuff. And I only intended this to be an introduction to cheese. But I didn't expect to realize that there was just so much more that needed to be discussed that now I'm going to have to warrant an actual, at least a second episode, if not a third. This is how expansive this is. I've been so grateful for having you here, Drew, because I've just learned so much here today. I love how you can just talk for hours of this, and I'm there writing my notes and asking questions, and just my brain is stimulated and all that. And, I really appreciate that you had the opportunity and the time to be here today to at least illuminate us when it comes to a topic that I think a lot of us are extremely fascinated on and enjoy. And, I didn't even touch upon this, and I wanted to do this from every single cheese that Drew had mentioned on the list. I wanted to do this. I was going to ask, what's the best spirit or wine to combine with it? Guys, that's going to be an episode on its own. That's because again, to combine wine and cheese, this is a known thing. Wine and cheese is a known thing when it comes to parties or to experience a good gastronomical type stimulation. And yeah, we didn't even touch on that. We didn't even touch on, and I'm not a slouch when it comes to the wines. So that's why I want to consult with Drew, because he's the expert when it comes to the cheese, and I know he knows his spirits too. So I would love to have just one episode about combinations when it comes to, alcohol with cheese, and that's totally different from another episode, which would be okay, like Drew said, what foods, what do you combine it with? Like, what does it go? Guys, we got videos for cheese forever. But we're going to wrap it up because Ken, is going to be going live in a moment. And he was, actually very nice and asking when I would be done and trying to coordinate with me. And, I said he could go live at any point, but I appreciate that he wanted to hold off on this. So we're going to basically wrap this up right now. Again, thank you so much, Drew, for just being here for this ride, because I love that. We talked for 3 hours on cheese. And we didn't even fucking touch the rind. You get it, people? Rind, surface?
I love it.
You get it? All right, so here's what we're going to do.
I appreciate it, man. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's an absolute pleasure. Stay on the call as I end the show and stuff. But again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here today. Thank you, The Goon. I had no idea that, I had no anticipation to promote donations or anything like that. I just wanted to talk cheese and get Drew to illuminate us all. So on that note, I put the link several times in the chat. Ken is going live as soon as I end the stream. Be sure to check it out. And again, thank you so much for joining us here. Have a Merry Christmas, because we are, after all, in the 4th day of Christmas. And if I don't speak to you sooner, have a Happy New Year. Thank you so much.